feel about the debate? How do you feel like it went?
Oh, I think it went extremely well because my main thing, and I sent Donnie the expectations and the rules that I wanted the debate to have, which really was just the cross-examination. So during cross-examination, you can't answer questions with questions, and you're not allowed to ask questions either. That was really the main thing, because I've seen a lot of people debate him, people I like and respect, and it just turns into, what about blank? Yeah, well, we know that because of blank. Now you tell me about blank. Oh, yeah? Well, fuck you. Tell me about blank. I was like, no, even though it would have been maybe more, like when I talk to Darth, I don't take him seriously. I don't pay any respect. I completely troll him the entire time because that's what he deserves, because you can't get anything out of him. You can't even get a concession out of Darth. But with Kent, I knew if we did it that way, well, because Darth will just refuse to participate in anything that's moderated that way. But I figured Kent would, if he would. So that was the biggest thing. I can really only think of 2 times where I wish I would have. Well, I can think of one time where I forgot to say something that I wanted to. And I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Maybe we'll run into it. The language thing was one of them, because he said languages don't reproduce, and I never explained what I mean by that. And then on the definition of religion, he got me a little bit, but I've never seen that definition he was using, where religion is just a group of people that believe something. I was like, that's a weird ass definition of religion, but if you say so.
So that's the. I will pull up when we get to that point. I'll have the religion definition, because I think he may have cherry picked that definition, but I will get to that part.
Yeah, and that definition wouldn't be unique to religion. I do this with faith. People say, no, faith means trust. It's like, yeah, but trust means trust. So if we're going to have a word faith, if there's a purpose for the word faith existing, it must have an unshared meaning to it. That's a philosophy that I've had for a while. And so faith is when you believe in something without any evidence. So that's what I mean by faith. And for religion, if there's no appeal to the supernatural, then it's not really a religion. And no science can be a religion for that reason. So.
Okay.
You want to get started?
Yeah, let's get started.
Okay. So I'll start with my opening statement. And this is going to be sped up 1.25 times, because there's no way we're going to get through this whole thing today. We got to get through as much as we can. So countless times I've seen Kent ask questions that he believes pose a challenge to evolution. You know, why this? Why that? So let's say that hypothetically Kent asks a question that somebody does not have an answer for. What is Kent's answer? Oh, Myth Vision podcast. Thank you very much. That's pretty cool. I'm starting to get noticed by people. Answer going to be, if it is a how question.
I wonder if the Kent debate helped with that.
No, it was the Dr. Josh Bowen.
Okay.
That's how Myth Vision found me, I think. Something happened this, that, or the other.
Peterson, I don't think you have it on 1.5. I think this is just how you normally talk.
No, it's 1.25. Kent's answer will be, God did it.
Oh, I don't notice the difference between.
It's not how God did it. It's just the claim that God did it. If it's a why question, Kent will say the same sort of thing, because God did it. That's not an answer or even an attempt to make an argument. It's simply a conclusion given in desperation. So I promise that tonight, I wrote my entire opening statement over a month ago, and I didn't tweak it really at all. Kent will not. No? Same with the questions I asked him. I wrote those like almost a month ago. Give a single answer or reason or explanation for anything that we discuss. Kent will only give us his conclusions. Hopefully, at a few turns, if Kent's honest, he will at least say, I don't know. But the problem is the God hypothesis is fundamentally useless, which is the alternative explanation to evolution by natural selection and therefore common descent, which is the topic of our debate tonight. The God hypothesis can't answer any questions. And we know this because a God, the type of God Kent believes in, could have done literally anything. It has supposed unlimited abilities. So did God create the world billions of years ago? That's absolutely a possibility. God could have done that. What about only 6,000 years ago? God could certainly have done that as well. God could have created the whole world an hour before this debate began. Kent thinks that the Bible proves that the answer is 6,000 years and that evolution doesn't take place and every organism was created pretty much as we see them today. But that's just question begging. According to Kent, Genesis is literal, the genealogies are reliable, and the beginning of everything goes back 6,000 years. If that's true, then there must be evidence, but there is zero evidence. For example, we can see billions of light years. That's really... I was a little bit annoyed with myself that I didn't talk about evolution very much in my opening statement, because it bothers me when Kent says, well, in order to prove evolution, you have to prove that the universe came from nothing, because that's the Big Bang, and that's evolution. But all I was trying to do is demonstrate that he can't give an alternative explanation. So I wasn't going to sit there and be like, show the fossil record and show the genetics.
So I'm going to push you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the thing is that he does have an alternative. The alternative is the God thing, right? So that's his alternative.
Well, yeah, but I mean...
that has no explanatory power.
Yeah, it's a big nothing burger is what I mean.
Exactly.
Yeah, so and if I were to debate somebody like on Modern Day Debate on Flat Earth, I wouldn't go over the history of how star maps were made and blah, blah, blah. I would basically just start from the position that science doesn't require an opening statement. It stands on its own. Here's why everything you're going to hear from the opponent is completely stupid. So you may think that that's dodging or not fair, but when it comes to something as dumb as saying evolution is fake or the earth is flat or that the earth is only a few thousand years old, those are all co-equally stupid. So I'm not going to give them any respect. That's just me. All you need to establish that claim is false. So it's over right there. Kent will say something like, if God created a mature atom, then he can create a mature-looking universe, but that's not an explanation, it's a conclusion. If there was a way to date the universe, and the universe is 6,000 years old, then the only acceptable answer is 6,000 years. But since that's not what happened, now what we have to do is invent from nothingness the claim that God just did it that way and created a very young universe that is billions of light years across. And there's no evidence for that. It's just that Kent has to say that because that's the only way to preserve the conclusion that he already had. It's not an explanation. It's not an argument. It's not predicated on evidence. It's just an assertion. Now, I said all of that, but I don't want this topic is not about, the age of the universe or anything like that. I only draw out that example as a way to explain the problem that we have here. So tonight, I hope that we only talk about biological evolution from this point on. I just give that example to illustrate the fallacy in Kent's reasoning. So at no point tonight do I believe that Kent will use data to support what he believes in, apart from claiming that frogs give birth to frogs, as if that disproves evolution, which it does not. At no point will Kent be able to give an explanation for how or why God did anything. I can't believe how true this actually came, what I said. I'm actually surprised.
It was I don't think there's anything I would change in the opening statement, to be honest. I think you did a pretty good opening statement. You addressed his character, and you pointed out how his character is quite blatantly clear. But yeah, I guess we could probably move on to Kent's opening statement from this point, because
mine's almost over. The only other thing I say is Kent believes in evolution, just a methamphetamine fueled type of evolution that can work on the order of genuses and families, but not beyond that for no reason. I will say, I never said it during the debate. I thought about saying it, but I didn't want to waste time. The way he used my name to say on planet Peterson, blah, 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 is actually really funny. So
it is really funny.
Yeah.
There's one joke that he says in this debate that I did laugh at and you didn't think was funny. And I'm going to shame you for it.
Okay.
Observe, study, test. And then there's the world of imagination called Planet Peterson. We've already demonstrated some of that tonight in his opening. He has a wild imagination, and we shall see. In the real world, cows have baby cows. That is
so he didn't say frogs give birth to frogs. It was cows and cows.
what we call science.
Yeah,
it's
he likes to
observable,
go
it's
to cows.
testable, it's demonstrable. That's the definition of science. On planet Peterson, cows came from an amoeba over billions of years with slow, gradual changes that you have to imagine happening long ago. We never observe an amoeba produce anything other than amoeba, but he thinks an amoeba slowly, over billions of generations, changed into a cow and everything else. Today, there are, in the real world, 450 breeds of cows that farmers recognize, 4 different basic types: dairy, beef, dual purpose.
So I will say that the vast majority of his opening statement, I think, is completely irrelevant because he spent what seemed like half of it saying we don't have a good definition for a species, which has nothing to do with whether or not evolution is true. So,
Well, the definition of species. So like let's say like I define species as those that can only have a fertile offspring would be the definition of a species. Let's just say that for instance. Like it doesn't matter what definition I hold of what a species is. It's just going to move the line of what becomes a species and what evolves into a different species just arbitrarily. That's all it does. It doesn't change the actual
yeah,
evidence
I think that
behind
was the first
evolution at
thing. I
all.
think the definition of species was the first thing he said when he cross examined me. And I gave a definition of it. And I would have been happy to talk about how it doesn't really matter if we have problems defining them because evolution would just mean change over time. So it has no whether or not we can categorize species has no bearing on whether or not species do change over time. So
Right.
it was completely unhelpful for his position.
Probably all the cows had a common ancestor called a cow.
Yeah.
See, in the real world, somebody with the time and interest could probably make a family tree where all the cows came from an ancestor, which would be a cow. But in the imaginary world of Planet Peterson, cows are related to frogs and fish and kitty cats, and they're all related. On Planet Peterson, hoofed animals like cows are related to butterflies and bees and frogs. This is
Yep, they are.
the imaginary world that he lives in, folks. These charts that they make, these family trees, are pure imagination. It's fun, boys and girls. Just imagine. On Planet Peterson, all you have to do is imagine slow, gradual changes in the gene code. And you can change an amoeba to a cow and a butterfly and a frog. Just imagine. That's all this is, folks. It is certainly not science, what he believes, okay? It's a religion. See how easy it is? Turn an amoeba to a cow? Just imagine it, okay? Boys and girls,
So this screenshot, I'm almost
I
certain
recognized it.
that this is from. I look just like Mr. Beast in this screenshot, like with the kind of, I don't want to say it, like sleepy, dumb look on my face. But anyways, I'm pretty sure.
This was the video of you calling out Ken Hovind.
Yeah. So he did like Oppo
It was.
research on me or whatever. So I should have brought it. I didn't realize. Well, I don't know when I realized it, but I should have brought that up. I should have said, Kent, I recognize that video of me that you took that screenshot from. And I encourage everybody to go to TikTok, type in Kent Hovind is a monster, and you will see this. I did upload it to YouTube too, so you could see it in those two places. But the fact that he used that, I thought was pretty weird.
He must have seen it. He
Oh,
must
yeah.
have, because there's a bunch of people that were like adding Ken Hovind in the comment section of that video. So there's no way that he didn't see it, if that's because that is the screenshot of you talking about Ken Hovind.
Yeah.
I recognize it.
You know, I figured that he would probably do some background searching on me. So I can't tell you, I got asked a lot and I wanted to go over the things I was going to ask him, like in my cross-examination, just to like preview it to people. But I wanted to make sure that he didn't know any of those things. So I never did it just in case.
Yeah.
on Planet Peterson, we don't waste a lot of time trying to find a scientific answer to where our planet came from, or where time came from, or space, or matter, or energy came
irrelevant.
from, or how that first
It's all
amoeba just made
irrelevant.
itself out of the rock soup.
Irrelevant.
He wants to bypass all of that. Those are essential steps for his religion to be
No, they're
considered as
not.
part of science.
No,
He
it
wants to
doesn't.
skip over all that. I assure you, he will skip over tonight. Okay?
So
I
there's
don't-
a massive problem with that. It's
Yeah.
entirely fallacious. So the thing is that he's trying to equivocate. So this would basically be a category error. So the category error of this would be that he is saying that, well, if evolution is this, then therefore everything must be this. That has no bearing on what evolution is. So it could be the case that the god kicks the can down the road, and like a classical deist god, where the god kicks down the can down the road and just fucks off, and that's just how life starts. Or it could be the case that the god is using evolution as a means of factor for life to evolve. There's no logical contradiction in that.
Yeah, and like an example I usually use is I don't need to know when Jeffrey Dahmer was born to prove that he committed the murders or whatever that he did. You
Right.
don't need to know where life came from or where a universe came from to prove or disprove something about evolution. And I actually said that to him during the debate. I said, God could have miraculously created life billions of years ago, and everything we know about evolution would still be true. And he just, nothing from that point. Okay, so now he's just doing his stupid.
So I would,
oh, sorry.
yeah. So the way I would target it would be, I would ask him, is there a problem with the possibility of your God using evolution as a means of factor for life to evolve?
I know
And
what the answer to that would be, and it would just turn into a debate about a literal interpretation of the garden, because the reason he has to believe that, and Ken Ham, they have to believe that, is because they believe no death occurred on the earth before the sin entered the world. And so you can't have this process of evolution with mass waste and mass death going on for billions of years before sin happens. So I didn't want it to turn into a debate about should we believe what the Bible says, because well, I mean, even if that would happen, then it would just be a discussion on, I mean, you would counter that with the scientific evidence, but then we'd have to go into like paleontology and things like that. So I didn't want to divert it like that. And that's the problem when it's like when you debate Phil Bros, like debating young earth creationists, it's the same thing. Cause you have to go over, like when you're talking to like a Phil Bro, it's like you corner them on something, but then they pick one of the words you say and be like, well, let's argue for 20 minutes about the definition of that word and do anything other than talk about what we were talking about. Right. And with this is like, we're not doing paleontology today. We're not doing the fossil record today. I'm happy to bring them up. We're not doing, is the Bible fake or not? We're just talking about evolution. So,
well, the thing is, like, you could still argue the sense that no death occurred to the time that Adam and Eve was made, right? So, like, all the animals existed, and there was means of like selective breeding for all the animals that have existed on Earth for the garden to exist. And then when Adam and Eve did eat the tree of forbidden knowledge, then like all the Bible stuff occurred. You could argue that. And I know that there's theists that do argue that, where it's like, well, God naturally selected through that, so it's selectively bred for all the animals that are in the fossil record and that out of it, right? So there would be no contradiction to that of the Genesis take.
Yeah, I just didn't want to have a discussion on the Bible was the main thing.
Yeah.
And I see for some reason I can't reply to anybody's chats on OBS. It won't let me like reply, so I can't tag you when I type something. But I see Spin. No, I haven't seen King Crocoduck's Kent Hovind debate. So again, this is just him. What is a species? What is a species? What is a species? What is a species? What is a species?
Yeah.
just over and over and over. and then that's how it ended. So
yeah.
So
right.
Tax cheats,
So,
wife beaters, and people. Yeah. The moral grandstanding at the end there. So tax cheats, wife beaters, and people that let convicted child molesters share a cabin with 11-year-old boys at their park don't get to morally grandstand.
I knew he'd do that, Don. He can't do anything else.
He didn't mute me until I said the words morally grandstand, so I got the whole thing in there pretty much.
Go ahead.
Okay, Eric and Kent, you both got.
Yeah, it's not an ad hominem if it's true. I don't think that's how it works, anyways.
Your points in there.
Well,
so
no, the other thing is like, so even if it is true, if an argument's being made and instead you bring up the person's character, then it's considered an ad hoc. But
I guess
at this point, I don't think there was any argument being made here at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you could call it poisoning the well since it's true, I guess. But I mean, if he's going to do that, then I'm going to respond in kind. So
Let's now get right into cross-exam on the topic of common descent. Go ahead.
Okay. So you talked about the cows earlier, Kent. How do you know that those cows are related? You had like a cow family tree. How do you tell that?
Oh, the burden of proof's not on me to have to prove it at all. I believe they are. I admit mine's a religion. You will not admit yours is a religion. You believe cows are related to butterflies, don't you?
I did get a little bit nervous in this first about minute here because I just thought if he won't engage with any of these, then I can't actually cross-examine him. But it ended up not really being a significant problem. But it did take I wasted almost half my time just on this first thing because of how stubborn and stupid he was being. So I wish I would have stopped trying to pry an answer out of him and then just said what his position is and then gone through it because I could have gotten more questions in, but oh well.
Right.
Question was, how do you tell that the cows are related?
I don't have to tell. I think they all look the same in the meat locker. It's a skin color. I think all human history.
We can scientifically test to what degree things are related, and I know that you know how to do that. So how do you tell?
I don't worry about it. I think cows always make cows. All farmers in history and all around the world will tell you cows always have baby cows. They've now developed certain varieties.
He's so good at rambling.
So at this point, I would ask him, what are the properties that make a cow a cow?
Oh, yeah. He probably would have just said phenotypic things, I guess.
Yeah, but that would tell what a cow is a cow, right? So then you'd be like, okay. So then you could go, okay, so how would we test if one cow was related to another cow? So you can go like, okay, so now you know the law of identity, you know that you could identify certain properties to make the thing a thing. So now if we were to take a cow and let's say that I have this other cow and this person's saying that's related to this cow, how do we test to see if that cow is related? That's probably the way I would go about it.
That is a good way of doing it. Pretty sure he would have just said the same thing. I don't make the claim or whatever. The burden's not on me or whatever. But I do like where you're going with that. Alejandro, I watched like the first half of the mystery.
Them into...
What's that?
Oh, I was just gonna say the way that I would go about it is more trapping them into the sense that there would be a burden of proof on them at that point.
I think so, yeah.
Trapping them into the burden of proof to identify how you would do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Alejandro, I did watch like the first half of the Mr. Anderson debate. But I pretty much just watched the setup Mr. Anderson was doing to get Kent to like agree on terms or whatever. But yeah, it's 350, whatever the currency in South Africa is. I was like, what the fuck? So I don't know what that translates to. Hovind doesn't believe a word he says. He's a con man and found a way to swindle people and make money. Thanks for showing people that he's a fraud. The scientific information is always appreciated. Yeah, I do kind of feel like I think Kent still doesn't believe in evolution, but I think Kent has now come to grips with the fact that he can't do anything against the evidence. So he just says that the evidence is fake or conspiratorial and all this other stuff. I was actually thinking about this earlier today. Right, here we go.
More milk or more beef or stand the heat better, but they're all still cow. And there seems to be a distinct limit.
So somebody, you know the Maury Povich show where they used to do you are the mother or you are not the father, so on and so forth?
I don't think I've ever watched that, but okay.
Oh, you've heard about it before, haven't you?
Maury Povich, something now. Okay.
Okay, so like for people, how do you do a paternity test? How do you tell?
I've never done that either. I have 3 children. I know they're mine. And,
I'm not asking. See, he's just being purposely stupid. How do you do it? I don't do it. I'm asking you how is it done?
That's what it is.
Yeah, like how do you get from New York to London? I've never done it. No, how do you do it? You fly a plane, right? I've never done it. It's if you have done it. I'm just saying concept. And I'm pretty sure because of his debate with Gutsick Gibbon, he knows he can't go anywhere near genetics or he's completely fucked.
Yeah. Because what he's doing is he's obfuscating to try not to answer.
Yeah. How is that done?
Well, today it's probably one of the main tools they would use would be DNA analysis to see you have the same DNA code as the child or the father or the mother.
Yep. And I mean, all humans share basically the same genetic code, but you can tell who's more related. You can tell like this person is or is not your child, even though we're all humans, right? So it would be the exact same story with the cows, right? I know that you know that.
I know what you want me to say. It's correct. We have a lot of DNA similarities between all the different animals because the same designer must have written that code. All 4,000 books in my library probably have the same basic code, 26 letters of an English alphabet. It doesn't prove any relationship. This is very different than a paternity test from Maury Pervert or whatever his name was.
Genes. So genetics only tells you if things are related. So I have a question. What would be the only way it would be possible for two cows to not be related at all, to have zero relationship?
Well, I don't know. I don't care. I don't think they care either, but I don't know.
Do you agree that the only... Oh, sorry. Do you agree that the...
I don't know. Yeah.
Stop
I got
obfuscating,
it. Do you agree that the only way it would be possible is if they share zero genes?
I'd have to think about that one. I don't know. I never thought about that. I don't worry about that kind of stuff. But
I don't worry about that kind of stuff. Evolution's fake, but I don't worry about the evidence that goes into testing the theory of evolution.
Yeah. So, pretty much at all this point, he's just obfuscating. So, you did lead up to like how I would have opened up with debating Kent on it. Like you're talking about like how would we determine things that are not related, like with 100% certainty that these two things are not related, right? So you did eventually get there, but I feel like you could have probably got there a little bit sooner. And the way that I was saying, where it's like, okay, identify what the properties makes a cow, and then go in, okay, so if two people have cows and you want to determine that they're both related, how would you determine that? Right. So it would force them to basically admit that the only way to determine that would be through genes. And it's like, okay, so if the cows were not related, how would we determine that? And then you would get to that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be... I don't know if that would work with him, but that would be... it's airtight, basically. He can always just refuse to engage.
You just have to beat you. Yeah, so you'd have to beat him over the head with it. So you would just, the problem is like with this format, you only have 20 minutes, and there's so many things you probably want to get down to, but like you don't want to get bogged down on like what the fuck a cow is. You don't really want to get bogged down on that. So I understand it. But like if it was like a more of a long format debate where you don't just have 20 minutes, I feel like you could easily trap him into him with just going with that.
Yeah.
But I know like for you probably
our
have, like,
second debate
to ask all at once.
Our second debate, Donnie said, let's just do the same thing. I'm thinking instead of doing the free-flowing part that we did, either just each of us gets 45 minutes, or we'll do 20 for me, 20 for him, and then go back to me for 20 and 20. Like it's still cross-examination, but like, go back and forth instead of all, use my entire chunk all at once. Because I just think it's a little bit more effective. All right. Parents pass on genes, and their children share a collection of their genes from their parents. So if two brothers are related, it's because their parents passed down genes, and you can tell that they have an overlap of those genes. That makes sense, right?
Well, as far as I know, that is pretty reliable. I think there's so many identical genes in.
What I really wish I would have done, and I need to remember this for next time, is I need to, when he starts doing what he's doing right now, I need to cut him off and be like, Kent, it's just yes or no, or I don't know. Because he wasted way too much of my time.
And all humans, that may have gone back to Adam and Eve.
I almost feel like he does it on purpose because he knows the time limit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's trying to waste your time so he can get to his cross-examination. So he's like, well, you didn't get to ask your questions. Now it's time for me to do it. And then I'm just going to...
Well, he just doesn't want to be held accountable because he knows he can't do anything in the face of the evidence. I mean, think about how Kent intentionally chose a more unflattering picture of you in his presentation. Yeah, I mean, whatever.
You're Noah. Sure, we probably have some similarity.
Oh, now
There
I
might
can
even be
see
some
the
similar
chat.
code
That's
in our
perfect.
DNA to the
Great.
code of a monkey because they all have to have the same lines of code to grasp their fingers or blink their eyes or listen. So there may be lines of code because that's a necessary feature from a design perspective. So it's not the only way to prove there's relationship. There's where I think you're way off base. A different planet.
Okay, so would you agree that if two things share 0 genes, then they can't be related?
Wait. I know a way better question. Ask him this. Like, I would have asked him this. Okay. Because now it's just popped in my mind. And I didn't think about this when I was watching this because I had like a bunch of things in my mind. Like, I still have them racked in my mind, but I have a way better question. Ask him this. If, let's say, somebody claimed that they were your daughter, right? They had your eyes, they had your hair, they had all that, and they claimed to be your daughter. How would you determine that that was your daughter or not your daughter if you consummated this daughter outside your own marriage?
Yeah,
How would you
because he would
determine
just,
that?
with the cow thing, like cows are cows, and a cow looks like a cow because a cow looks like a cow. It's like, okay, but that doesn't prove that two cows are directly related.
Right.
So,
But if you make it personal and you say that, let's say this person comes up to you and says, I'm your daughter, you consummated me outside your marriage. And they have your hair color, they have your eye color, they kind of have your face shape. How would you determine that was not your daughter to save your marriage? How would you determine that?
yeah, it'd have to be genetics. Yeah, that's a good one.
Exactly.
Donnie asked me if I want to debate this other person. Apparently, he's like a Catholic. He's Catholic. He has his own website, and I don't know if he's like a minister or a priest or something like that. But he's a geocentrist. He's not a flat earther, but he's a geocentrist. But apparently, he's gonna see if we just want to debate evolution. So that'll be. I've never met a geocentrist before.
I don't know that could be proven.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd argue that.
Doesn't matter to me.
Well, you could just sequence their DNA. We do that kind of thing all the time.
Would you understand how complex the DNA is?
Yeah. He did this multiple times. Oh, I think DNA is incredibly complex. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It does. So,
You got a code that goes from here across the
Yeah.
solar system twice for one human being. That's a DNA code for one person. I don't think we can sequence all that. I don't think it's ever been all sequenced. All they're finding
No,
is the
it
CATG
has.
series.
genes get sequenced all the time. Like, let's not pretend that scientists don't know what they're doing and that you and I somehow know better. So, if two things have 0 genes in common, they can't be related. That's just, I don't see how there's any getting around that.
Well, that's a statement you're making. I said I don't know. I'd have to have, not something I've gotten into the study of. But I think
He taught
That's where
science
I
for
would ask
15
the-
years and he doesn't know that.
Yeah, so that's where I would ask him the question of the daughter thing.
Yeah.
Now that like that's popped in my mind, that would be such an amazing question for Ken.
like just our
You'd be like, okay,
sentence sequencing
that'd
in all my
be
books might
perfect.
have all the adjectives before the noun. That's common. It was a big red train. Adjectives come before the noun. Oh wow, does that prove they're related to some other one that says the big blue cheese chunk of cheese? No.
No.
It's a sequence that's necessary for English language.
Right.
Maybe there's a DNA code that's necessary to make things work.
But if
I
there
don't
was a
know that it proves relationship. You don't either.
But if there was a language that shared literally 0 words or anything in common with English, we would not say that those two languages are related.
I don't think languages are related at all. It has to do with reproduction. I think related would be.
You don't think that Portuguese and Spanish are, by related, we mean that they're part of a language family?
I think you'd find thousands of identical words and very similar words in Portuguese and Spanish, certainly.
Yeah, because
And
they
I
come
think
from common descent. But if two languages share literally nothing at all in common, then we would know that they would have there's 0 relation between them.
So you're using an example of things that do not reproduce. You guys complain
Languages
about me all the
reproduce.
time. Languages reproduce.
Yeah.
I'd like to see how that happens. I taught biology.
So yeah, somebody only a few years ago invented the word selfie, and other people started saying it, and so language reproduces. No, words don't have PPs and vajayjays. No, they don't. But they do reproduce because language produces copies of itself. And you can argue that, well, no, it's the person that's doing it, which is really just kind of a dumb semantic thing. But no, I think the claim that languages reproduce is actually completely on point. So I don't know. Do you have any issue with that?
I think that I don't really have an issue with that. I feel like you could have probably went. Like, I know it's hard because you only have 20 minutes. So, like,
well, I told him to ask
one of
me
those
when
things
it's his
where-
turn, and he never did.
yeah. So, the problem is like you could go into depth into like explaining like how the languages actually reproduce and that they are actually like part of a family lineage. You could go into the history of like how English is Germanic and how it comes from like Proto-European language, and you could go into super depth, but like given the time constraint, I think this is fine.
Yeah, that's the main reason I didn't want to go into it, because I know how to defend it.
For years. I don't believe that at all. Okay.
Yeah.
Languages don't reproduce. Okay. I think humans have to change them. So you guys get after me when I say Fords and Chevys have round tires. I say they don't reproduce. Well, neither do languages, Eric. So why are you using that as an example?
Well, it's not your turn to ask questions, but write that down for later.
It's a category
So-
error.
You don't want to answer it. I see.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, you could claim that the language one is too, but I think it's a perfectly good analogy. So,
Well, the analogy works in terms of the category, right? So the thing is that he's saying that, well, tires don't reproduce and languages don't reproduce. Well, that's an entire category error. So you would have to distinguish how languages don't reproduce and why it's analogous to the tire. But the thing is that he can't defend
well,
that. So,
oh, sorry.
So I was just going to finish off and just say that. So to point out that they don't reproduce, you'd have to explain why languages don't reproduce. He's just making the claim that he's not defending that claim.
Yeah.
That's
And
the issue.
languages are so good because they evolve, they mutate, they go through micro mutations, and they're random. Nobody, you can't predict how or why an accent develops, why one person in one region calls something by a different name or says it in a different way, but it catches on by what's either through dumb luck or by what's catchy or what people like. So the elements of language and genetic evolution are actually so good to compare. That's why I do them all the time. But anyways.
The great question to ask this would be that, are you currently in a chamber or are you in a room?
Well, he used to be in a
proper
cell.
English. Well, wasn't it chamber first?
Was what? Rooms were called chambers?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was making a prison joke. He used to be in a cell.
Oh.
And now he's...
I missed it. But proper English, like from England, was chamber. So this was like the room that I'm in is a chamber.
Yeah.
But then when what was it? The Nords, and I think that's incorrect, but Simon Dan's here.
That's cool.
It's cool. Love his videos. But anyways, maybe Simon Dan would know about it because he's British, but there was like a war between Britain and like the Nords. I want to say it's the Nords, but because of that, they exchanged languages, and now we have like the English that we speak now, right? So, like we don't call this a chamber; we call it a room. But we distinguish what a chamber means now to like a thing in a castle.
Yeah, right? and that's an example of a borrowed word, or in other words, horizontal gene transfer. What?
Yeah.
So, anyways, I don't want to talk about languages forever because I could.
We agreed with.
And you're actually not answering any questions right now, which is kind of frustrating. Somebody, I don't know if you saw the comment, but somebody went through this and they counted that Kent said, "I don't know," 19 times in the cross-examination, which is just so beautiful.
Just basically been saying, "I don't know."
Take a shot every time he says, "I don't know." Take a shot.
Don't do that unless it's water.
Because you know where this is going. Everybody who knows how to think knows that the only way to have zero relation is to share zero genes. But the fact is, humans share genes with other organisms. So why is that the case if we're not related to other things?
I did answer that question, Your Honor. We can share genes because we have the common designer, because we have the common necessary functions, grasping your fingers together like monkeys do and humans do. That doesn't necessarily prove relationship. It could prove a common set of gene code to make the flexor muscles and extender muscles work.
This was so dumb. Saying we have a gene for doing this
You're wanting a single
was really
And
dumb.
I think there may be other things
I
to
don't know
explore.
what
I would
he would
look at
mean
that
by
more
that.
carefully if I was you.
So I didn't ask you any questions about like being able to move your fingers. You're obviously dodging this, and that's fine. We're just talking about genetics.
You asked about a
So
DNA code. There's a DNA code to make you flex your fingers.
What?
Isn't there?
I wouldn't say that there's a DNA code for doing this. DNA guides the development of muscles, but to say there's a DNA code that does this, I don't know what that could possibly mean.
Okay.
Like we talk, but there's no gene for saying the word balloon. But anyways, I have a lot more
That was
questions.
perfect.
So
That was perfect.
yeah.
That was perfect
If you think that
analogy.
the gene overlap is because of common design, then why did God design us in a way that's indistinguishable from the evidence of evolution, i.e., that we would share genes? Because we know that passing on genes conveys relatedness between things.
I don't know that we know such a thing. You're making a statement, an assertion.
I can reply to super chats, but not regular chats. This is OBS YouTube chat is really annoying me.
And that I don't think has been demonstrated. I think
You agreed to it, paternity tests and all that kind of stuff. That's exactly what that
Paternity
does.
tests are usually pretty accurate, to my knowledge, to determine who the parents are. On Maury, what's his name, pervert, whatever. So I think that it.
Maury pervert.
Yeah, that was kind of funny.
Explanations. I would be willing to bet every human being on the planet has DNA code that matches. You might even find DNA code in a human that matches a carrot.
So Kent, the question was, why did God design the DNA code this way?
Oh, I have no idea.
There you go. The debate is over. That was kind of the end for the most part right there. Okay, that's for his side anyways. Yeah.
What I was talking about in my opening statement. Okay. Do you think God designed animals to live in the water?
It looks like it to me with all the fish and octopus. Quite a few animals live in the water. They look pretty well designed to live in the water.
So do you agree that things like dorsal fins, pectoral fins, tail flukes, those are traits for animals that live in the water, or that animals that live in the water have?
Yeah, they seem to be well designed for that purpose. I think they enjoy having them.
He was digging he was doing my job for me by just saying over and over again, "Oh yeah, those things are definitely designed." I was like, "Oh, yes."
Well, it's good that Kent's dad was an engineer for Caterpillar, because he could use the excavator that his dad engineered to keep digging that hole.
To keep digging.
But you would agree, you actually answered my next question, so I think you're reading my mind. So I can skip that. But you agree that in organisms, its features, phenotype, you think that that's sculpted by genes and how those genes are expressed, I would assume, right?
Right. I think the genetic code tells that body how to develop from an egg and a sperm into the full-grown animal. It's following a very incredibly complex code. Way too complex to have ever happened by chance.
Yep. And you think that those genetic similarities that we see between organisms, that's caused by the common designer too, right?
Or I think the designer designed it just like they designed submarines to have and airplanes.
It's funny how earlier he was like, "I have no idea how you tell how things are related." Like, yes, you do. It's through genes. And now here he is being like, the genetic code is evidence of design. It's like, that's fascinating how all of a sudden you have things to say about the genetic code.
Also have ailerons.
Yeah.
Because they have to go through a fluid
because he was
like
purposely not
liquid
answering.
or a gas. So I think it's a great design feature that has to be. And they might have similarities in the code to make the aileron go up and down in an airplane and in a submarine.
Sure.
But they're doing the same thing to steer it. Okay.
Hey, Donnie, where are we at with the time right now? Sorry.
Good question. You're just a little bit over 10 minutes.
Okay.
So you're doing pretty good.
This whole thing about design and genetics and the phenotypes of organisms. So if God designed that genetic code, then that means the genetic
Will, just type your question in a regular chat and I'll read it out loud.
code can objectively reveal to us evidence of common design if common design is a thing. So this is where some actual science can take place, because we're not just making assertions. We have a claim and there's evidence we can actually look at for this claim. So do whales have things like tail flukes and dorsal fins and pectoral fins?
Yes, sir.
What about sharks?
They do. Yes, sir.
Do hippopotamuses have those things?
They have some similar bone structure because allows
See,
the different
he
parts of
knew
the
he
body
was
to flex in the
trapped
same.
there.
Yeah.
See, he knew he was trapped, and then he didn't want it, so he purposely obfuscated.
Yeah. Well, they
He's
have
like, well,
bones.
They all have bones.
You know
But
what?
That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about the phenotypical traits.
It probably wouldn't have been a good look, but I'm actually surprised I didn't do my Kent Hovind impersonation during the debate. I really should have. I really should. Well, no, my name's Kent Hovind, and I think that, cows produce cows, and throughout all of human history, farmers have bred cows, and they'll tell you that when you have a cow and you get another cow, and they produce baby cows. But you want to tell me that an amoeba turned into a human being because you have this religion that requires billions of years of time, and that's the only way you can get a human from an amoeba. My name's Kent Hovind.
Well, I was just talking about the hippos.
I like
So
Simon
hippos with-
Dad's comment here. How he didn't know earlier you were walking him down a path.
Yeah,
here.
he realized
I
it
had
at the
no
very
idea how to do
end,
that.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Will still hasn't typed his message. Okay.
regard to like the tail fluke, the dorsal fin, the pectoral fins, they don't have any of those things. Obviously, a hippo has bones. So does a whale.
Right.
So, anyways, so why is it that whales have the same design as sharks, but their DNA says they're more similar to hippos?
Well, I don't.
That pause there was, and again, this is sped up. So that was a great. I also never used the cricket. I should have done it right then and there.
Wait, can you like rewind it a little bit? Because I want to see Donnie's reaction.
Why is it that whales
like
have the same design as sharks, but their DNA says they're more similar to hippos?
Well, I don't.
He kind of went.
Like, oh. Shit, you got me there. That was a fucking amazing question. That was amazing.
Did you consider asking Kent why he's having these discussions, since he claims to not know a damn thing about anything? That did cross my mind, because when he says I don't know 19 times, I should have maybe just said, so Kent, I get that you believe what you believe, but what you believe could be false. I know even you think that. And you know so little about evolution that you can't determine whether or not it's false. So I don't understand why you take a strong position on it. I
don't know that it says that.
You know, it'd be a good question that you should bring up in your next debate with him. Ask him if it's rational to hold a belief predicated on a logical fallacy.
What's the fallacy, though?
So when it comes to like these like debates, like and when it comes to evolution, right? So he's making category errors. He's begging the question, like especially when we get to like his cross examination. Like I'll point out to when he's begging the question like, constantly. But he's using logical fallacies to try to obfuscate away from evolution being a thing, right? So if he's holding to the belief that evolution is not true, predicated that on circular reasoning that, well, everything must be designed because these things look designed, so therefore as a designer, how do I know it's designed, etc., right? So that's a logical fallacy. He's believing that it's designed predicated on logical fallacy. So you just ask him, if you are doing circular reasoning, is it rational to hold a belief predicated on this logical fallacy? The obvious answer is no. Then you just point out, well, then you're being irrational.
Yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't go there because he'll just deny that he's being irrational. So it'd be this Eric Burns comment about having the open house, and I wonder if I'll accidentally run into any Hovind believers. I was the best man in a wedding, and the bride's family are like super fundamentalist religious. Like for their family reunion, they went on the Ken Ham Ark tour. And so like the whole time during the wedding, I was just like we went out to eat. And so like, obviously they did like this prayer. I was like, they better not ask me anything about what I believe in, or they better not ask me to like say some words or something like that. 'Cause I'll just be like, no. I was and the whole time my friend, the groom, he was like, just shut up, okay? And I was like, I'm going to, but you got to do something about, or tell them not to talk to me, I guess.
You know what you should do one of these days, and I think Simon and Dan should do it too, is that you and Simon and Dan should both go to the Ark encounter and actually like visit it and just like go make it a challenge. How long can I go into the Ark encounter before cringing?
I don't think I'd have to go home right away. I wouldn't get in the front door. I'd look at it and be like, oh.
Incredibly
moving
complex.
on.
I mean, it's cool engineering though. The fact that they built an Ark like that, it's cool. It's
kind of, but also the fact that it has air conditioning and isn't seaworthy kind of proves a different
Well, how
point.
do you know that they didn't have God AC?
Yeah. How do you know that Noah didn't have superhuman powers?
According to my worldview,
Exactly.
and I think they have a bone structure I think they have fins. They have to do the same thing a shark has to do: swim through the water, raise and lower their depth through the water, navigate, turn, chase food, whatever they're doing.
But why is
you, know
there
what, you know what? Why do sharks have a swim bladder to raise and lower themselves, but whales don't?
Well, he would just say because they breathe air. But yeah, the question would be why. And we did that later. Because I asked him, why did God design some animals that live in the water to breathe air? And he said his answer was to make evolution believers realize that God is cool or something. It was so bad. A name more similar to a hippo than a shark, when the whale and the shark live in the same environment and have the same body organs, like structures.
Well, again, there would be several different ways to look at that. You would look at it as if they have to be related, and I would say, well, the same guy designed them. I'd be willing to bet all the Sikorsky helicopter and all the Huey helicopter and all the other helicopters have a lot of design similarities.
So we went through this, that if the DNA code is designed and the DNA code is what creates these structures, then we would objectively be able to find evidence of common design with animals that have the same outward appearance of design. See, I actually, not to toot my horn too much, but I think this line of questioning is almost perfect because it just illustrates how their explanation is a complete failure from this perspective. I don't know if he wasn't getting it or if he was dodging it on purpose, but yeah, he just wouldn't really reconcile with it. Was like, no, we already went over this, Kent. The DNA should show the evidence of design, but when we look at the blueprint and then the structure, two blueprints that are more similar don't match. The structure doesn't match. This is a huge problem. And like I said, he either didn't get it or just refused to accept it.
Well, like I said before, I think the perfect argument for the relationness of like DNA, right, would be giving him the proposition of like, if somebody who claimed to be your daughter that you consummated out of marriage and is claiming that, but has the same color hair of you, the same face structure as you, same hair, like all the same structures, looks like your kid, how would you determine in order to save your marriage that this was not your kid? How would you do that?
Yeah.
You just look at the DNA, right?
Yeah.
So the phenotypes of it doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant.
The funny thing is, I didn't know how to navigate this in real time, but when he brings up the hippo and says like, oh, they have the same bone structure and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, so now you don't realize it, but you're talking about homologous structures, which is extraordinarily strong evidence of evolution. So I didn't know how to like get him on that. So I didn't want to divert from the questions I had, but yeah, fine. The evidence of that would be buried in the genetic. When's the next debate? My next Kent Hovind debate is October 2nd at the same time, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. It's not though. The whale shares vastly more genes with the hippo that has none of those features and lives on land compared with the shark. So there's a terrible, complete silence. Terrible failure.
Yeah, he's cooked.
Just did. Again, this is sped up, but let's listen to it in real time and just how much silence there was there.
I'll count it.
And lives on land compared with the shark. So this is a terrible failure.
Was that a question? I didn't hear.
Well,
12 seconds. 12 seconds of silence before he responded.
Do you ever listen to stuff on 50% speed?
I can't say I have. No.
Dude, it's so funny. I'm only going to do this for a little bit, but we'll listen to me because it makes everybody sound like they're drunk. Listen to how funny this is. They're more have the same design as sharks, but their DNA says they're more similar to hippos. And like the way the voice trails off too. It's so perfect. I listen to like, I'll just put on like Joe Rogan podcast and I'll listen to it at 50% speed because he already sounds kind of dumb a lot of the times. But when you listen to it at 50% speed, it sounds like somebody whose blood alcohol level is like 0.75 trying to explain to you how an SR-71 Blackbird works. It's so funny. I want to hear what Kent sounds like at 50% speed.
Whales, according to incredibly complex. God created the whales according to my worldview, and I think they have a bone structure. I think they have fins. They have to do the same thing a shark has to do: swim through the water.
I think this is worse.
It sounds so funny though. They gotta swim
Just
through
imagining
the
like being at
water.
a bar and having to deal with drunk Ken Hovind just saying all this.
Yeah. All right. Of the line of questioning here. So I'll just ask it again. Why is it that the DNA code, which we went over, is designed and would reveal evidence of design, shows that the whale and the thing it's more similar to, the design evidence just evaporates when we look at the DNA, which is also supposed to be designed.
I don't know that it evaporates. I think there's quite a few similarities still between a shark and a whale. Okay, I think
There's so much more between the whale and the hippo.
I've never studied those DNA codes of any of those creatures. Okay.
See, that is an admission of failure right there. Well, I've never looked at it. That wasn't the point. The point is the evidence is not there, and so now he just has to feign ignorance.
Yeah. Which most of the debate is that.
Did I remind Kent that he's not a doctor? No, I didn't bring up his thesis, which I went through, or his dissertation, which I went through the entire thing in a 3-part video on YouTube. That should be a standalone debate. Is Kent a doctor? And I'd be more than happy to go over how his dissertation was utter fraud. So, we're over here.
If we find some similarities or differences that would not lead to the absolute sure conclusion that he's guilty, there is no God and it happened by chance and Charlie Darwin's the winner, I think you're coming to a vastly wrong conclusion. If there are some similarities,
I never said God
between
doesn't exist. Yeah,
okay.
completely
If there are
changed the
similarities
subject.
between the DNA code of a whale and a hippo, but they both breathe air. Maybe they have to have some lines of code for that. Sharks, as opposed to, don't have gills. Sharks have gills; they can breathe underwater, where whales don't. So I think that the DNA code is incredibly complex. I'd be willing to bet.
He did that so many times. The evidence in DNA would look like this. DNA is incredibly complex. He says that so many times.
$5 if we took the lines of code necessary to make a battleship and compared it to the lines of code necessary to make a helicopter, we'd find quite a few identical lines of code. Identical. It doesn't prove a relationship. That's the way it has to be designed. It's a design feature.
Okay, I mean, we could go into that more. I mean, that's so stupid. Like the idea that anything, whether it's a living organism or a machine, like the idea that a submarine would share more parts with an airplane than a boat is just, it's so mind-numbingly stupid, you know?
Yeah.
Because we're comparing a thing on land and in water to another thing in water. And the thing in water is more similar to the thing on land. That makes sense evolutionarily because it's descent with modification. But in the creation model, it fails completely. I have a lot more questions, and I don't want to run out of time. How many animals? He was a good sport about the whole thing. I'll give him props. Do you think we're on the Ark?
2 of each kind.
And then there's like 7 pairs of some of the other ones, right?
7 of the some, right? Yeah.
Okay, so
I
how
still don't know
many
what he
animals
means by kind. I've watched him like debate, and he says kind, but he never like explains what
it's
a kind
typically
is.
meant to be something like kind of similar to the same thing as a family, taxonomically speaking. So,
does he ever say that though?
I don't know if he's ever
I feel like
said
he
it.
always obfuscates on that because
Yeah.
like on the Mr. Anderson debate when he was talking about kinds, he kept like shifting the goalposts on what he meant by kind. So like when Anderson was pinning him down on what a kind was, he would shift it to like, well, I don't know. It might be the case that that's what a kind is. I don't know. It's like,
Yeah. I think that would be.
I don't think he knows what a
The
kind
current
is.
wild guess by a group called the Bearmanology website. Bearman means kind in Hebrew. They claim there are probably about 8,000 kinds of animals on the Ark. They have now diversified into the 167
The
varieties of ducks that we have
methamphetamine-driven
today.
style of
Natural
evolution he
selection has
believes
caused them
in.
to diversify. Some can handle cold weather better. Some can handle hot weather. Some like different environments. But it can only select from what's already available. So I think that I have no idea, but I would guess if I had to pick a number, I'd say probably 8,000 kinds of animals, and they have now diversified into maybe even there's
Sure.
no definition of species.
And we can
There's
even
no-
double that to, we can more than double that and just say there are like 20,000, just to, if we want to be crazy about this. How long do you think it took those species that were on the ark to become the, we've documented well over 1.5 million species today. There's probably a lot more than that. But how long do you think it took them to become the millions of species we see today?
Does that millions of species today include all the fish? Because they didn't have to go on the ark. Where'd you get that number from?
The vast majority of species we've documented are insects.
You know
So,
what's the thing about the fish and the ark thing though?
How
If
did-
the flood happened,
yeah, fresh fish living in that, it would be
Yes.
impossible. Yeah.
yeah,
I'll
so
probably
you would
bring
have a
that up
mass
in the
extinction.
next debate about the geologic column, because we're going to be talking about the fossil record. So I have that saved for that one.
Yeah, because I would have asked him that like almost immediately, but I guess that would be a better question for the column record.
Yeah.
We can if the flood occurred, like you would have brackish water everywhere, and brackish water like where I live now, there's brackish water, and like just certain forms of life cannot live in brackish water. It either has to be full on salt water or it has to be full on fresh water. Can't live in brackish.
Mhm.
Like you take a like let's say like a northern pike out of a lake, and you throw them in brackish water, they'll die. So like what?
Yeah. Well, maybe the fresh water was all on top and the salt water was all on bottom.
It's not how it works.
Again, there's no evidence. That's just something you have to say to preserve the conclusion you already had in mind. Take the fish, and that's only going to be tens of thousands, maybe
insects
near
also.
100,000. But sorry.
Well, God told Noah to bring those on land in whose nostrils is the breath of life. Insects don't have nostrils. They weren't on the ark either. They can survive on floating vegetation, floating carcasses. So of the land-dwelling, air-breathing animals, it would take probably about 8 or 10 or 20,000. But see, to say those 20,000 turned into let's pick a number and say there's even 500,000. And again, there's no definition of species. Okay?
Right,
But
Ken, I hate to interrupt, but I only have so much time. So the question is,
relevant.
how long do you think it took those 8,000 species to turn into the many, many, many hundreds of thousands of species we see today?
4,400 years is what the Bible says what dates would be.
I found this to be really dumb because he's implying that linearly species have just been diversifying into the numbers of species we see today. I was certain he was going to say it took way less time than that, because think what that would mean. That would mean that, like, in the time of Jesus, there were only half the species that we see today, which I really, if I had more time, I would have really hammered him on that, but I didn't. Congrats on debate without stooping to the name calling. Yeah. What irks me are the arguments of God's perfect design. Oh yeah, why would he put an air hole next to our food hole? Yeah, that Soylent, that comes up later. Kent says that because the radio in his car broke, that proves it was designed. And that's evidence of a good designer. And I was like, holy fucking shit, dude. I think, earlier, it comes up later. That's the second time I've done that. I asked him why we lost the gene to make vitamin C. And he's like, well, I think that's when he brings up the radio thing. He's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. My name's Kent Hovind.
So the question would be that if the God is, like, you'd ask him if the God is perfect, right? If the God is perfect, can the God do imperfect actions? No, everything he does is perfect because he is defined as perfect. So if the God designed something to fail, was it perfectly designed to fail, or was it a failure on the God, meaning that the God is not perfect because he failed at designing something perfectly?
That's a really good question. I would just be cautious about not letting the conversation turn into a theological discussion, but that one would work, I guess.
I think that would work in an evolution debate,
Yeah.
because if he's defining the God as perfect, right, then it would go against every notion that there would be any amount of design, right? Because if the designer is perfect, he wouldn't design things to fail, because he could design them perfectly to not fail.
Yeah. Okay. So why is it that a few thousand species can turn into millions of species in a short time, but the idea of that happening over hundreds of millions of years is somehow not possible?
Well, we cannot observe hundreds of millions of years, okay?
The
We can look at
question is, why
scientists.
is it not possible?
First of all, it's not possible to have the hundreds of millions of years. There's lots of ways to prove the Earth cannot be that old. There's not this debate tonight. I do that on my video number 1. It can't be billions of years old for lots of common sense reasons. Plus, we never see, what we've seen is 167 varieties of ducks.
The question is, why is it not possible? Not what have we seen? Why would it be impossible?
Well, there are barriers. There are certain barriers that animals reach a barrier, like the dogs. They got a 4.5-inch dog and a 44-inch dog. But there's a limit. You're not going to get a 5-mile tall dog or a half-inch tall dog. There are half-inch tall creatures.
That claim. It's
Yeah,
straw man. He's straw manning.
Yeah, and I didn't have enough time, but I wanted to stick on this a lot more. Why is it impossible? And he would have never come up. He's just saying that there are limitations. And so the question would be, what are those limitations based off of? Because the entire thing comes down to him claiming that evolution works like Pokemon. Because later I ask him, do you think that evolutionary biologists think that one day an animal gives birth to a completely different animal? And he says, no. I was like, okay, then stop framing all of your questions that way. It's stupid. You know it's stupid. It's been told to you how dumb that is. So quit doing it. But it's all he does.
Insects by the millions, okay? Yeah. And you guys don't admit there are limits to the variation. That's why you live on a planet with imagination. You can imagine these little changes going forever. Well, you and SpongeBob can get a room together, but that's not science.
So, again, why is it that we can just take one kind of animal that was on the ark or whatever? Like, why can one animal turn into the hundreds or maybe thousands of species of that animal that we can see today in just a couple thousand years, but more extreme changes are impossible?
Well, the science deals with what we can observe. We've observed humans being able to manipulate the gene code or selectively breed and develop new breeds of cows. There's a cow that gives 280 pounds of milk. Now, it wouldn't survive in nature. It survives in the barn.
Why am I not
when
interrupting?
you bring the food to it and bring the water to it, but it can barely walk. So I think we've observed man can artificially select things and get quite a strange variety.
Yeah.
They've now got over 330 some breeds of dogs.
What an
and
idiot.
Would not survive in the wild. So if you're talking about animals that are in the wild.
I think I was just basically letting him admit that he has no idea. So I don't know. I think that's what I was doing.
These new species you're referring to, are they all living in colonies alive without man's assistance in the wild? Where'd you pick this number of millions of species? You're including insects, which you should not, because it's just simply land-dwelling, air-breathing with nostrils. Read the Bible; it says that. But
so you think that there are hundreds of thousands.
Does he think that all bugs can live underwater?
Well, we're gonna go over it here.
Species of insects. And you think that although there was no dry land, they were flying around and didn't perish during the flood? That seems a little silly. I would like to get into that more later, but I know I'm almost out of time, so I want to try to get to my last question, if that's okay.
You got about 30 seconds, Eric.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thanks. So humans, we have the gene for making vitamin C, but it doesn't work anymore. So why did God give us a genome that has dysfunctional parts?
I have a car that the radio doesn't work anymore either, but I don't think Chevy made it that way. I think they made it to work, and something broke over time. I think we're looking at man today as a great grandson of the original. We're a copy off a copy.
See, I knew he was going where he was going with this, but then you'd have to assume that Adam and Eve could make vitamin C, which was a follow-up question I had, and he's like, I have no idea.
Off a copy. I think it's amazing anything still works with this incredibly complex gene code that you can pass on in an incredibly fun way to your next generation. So I think that's evidence of great design.
That it doesn't work is evidence of great design. I would never intentionally build something that I know is going to break. So you've kind of sold your God out just now. Are you claiming that Adam and Eve could make vitamin C and now we can't?
I don't know. I never met them. I'm going to meet them one day, but I suspect that they could. But see,
is there any evidence that they could?
I don't know. They live to be 900.
The one thing Kent's really good at is not giving definitive answers.
Yeah.
He's really good at that.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't give you a definitive answer, there's not so much that you can hold.
It's hard to criticize him, yeah. Which is why I made the whole thing about that his worldview is completely useless.
I don't think anybody does. How could I know if Adam and Eve could make vitamin C? How am I supposed to know something like that? Do you know?
I don't know. That's the problem with, well, they certainly didn't exist. And there's the problem with your worldview. And that's what I talked about in my opening statement. We have either incredulity or I don't know, or, just nothing. Did weird metaphors about cars with radios, I guess. So I went slightly over my time. We can pick up more of this later.
No worries. That was good. I like the thing to after Kent for both.
That many scientists quickly admit they do not know exactly what a species is. Would you please tell me, since the topic of the debate tonight is common descent the best explanation for the origin of species? would you please tell me what is a species exactly? Give me a foolproof, airtight definition of species.
Well, like you said, there are multiple definitions, and we do have demarcation problems. That is a real like philosophical quandary. So the easiest explanation that's typically used, like in schools or whatever, is a species is a group of animals that live in the same environment that can reproduce and produce fertile offspring. So you get weird exceptions to this, however, like lions and tigers. They can reproduce and produce a hybrid, although they don't live in the same environment. Now, typically those hybrids are sterile, but I have heard that they have successfully produced I don't know what you would call it, viable, fertile, I guess, lion-tiger hybrids. Hybridization is also common in the plant world as well. So plants that can be wildly different end up having some sort of hybrid compatibility.
Okay. Would you agree that the example you gave, the lion and the tiger, are both considered in the cat? We'll call it.
So he just completely, he thought he was going to be able to stump me. And so he just completely went to the next thing. There was nothing left for him to critique.
Family, for lack of a better word. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
That was a good
They're both in the
response.
cat family, right?
Yeah, the Felidae, I think that's a family, yeah.
Okay. I don't speak Latin. It's a dead language. So
I really wanted to say here, well, Latin was good enough for the Bible, Kent, but I just avoided most of the cheeky comments.
is because we can see
Yeah.
the two in the cat family hybridize, does that make you believe that lions are related to potatoes?
So the way you would test that, because Darwin had this crazy idea.
I was so glad that he asked this question because I knew
Yeah.
2 years ago how I would respond to this question. So I was so glad that he did it.
That
You
life has
prepared for
changed.
2 years. Like you sat there, you watched all the Ken Hovind debates. It's like, ask me the potato question. Ask me.
Yep.
You're just waiting for it.
Yep. Been waiting my whole life for this.
So much on our planet that, entire species become something different over time, which would imply, it wouldn't necessarily imply that there's one universal common ancestor, but that was the idea. And then later we figured out how to, that when animals or plants, whatever, when something reproduces, there's a hereditary molecule. We figured it out. It's DNA. So then in the 20th century, it was,
To me, this was the most important thing to discuss evolution this way, not just show him pictures of fossils and whatever, but to tell the story of how the idea of evolution was proposed, and then the evidence that would have confirmed evolution, we learned that later, and then evolution passed the test. To me, that was the most important thing to do, and he was completely useless to try to combat it in any way.
Yeah.
it's time to see if
Yeah, he
evolution
shot himself in the foot asking this question.
Is a hyena a cat or a dog? That would have been a good question because they're neither, but closely related to both.
would pass this test. If we can see that there is relatedness, and specifically a hierarchy of relatedness, mammals should share more genes in common with each other than they do with any other group of animals on the planet, so on and so forth. And that's exactly what happened. So do cats and potatoes share genes? Yes. Is that what it means to be related? Yes.
So you believe, for the record here, Your Honor, cats, the lion and the potato are related because they share some genes, okay?
Scientifically, that's the only thing we know about genetics. What it tells us is relatedness. And you can tell how closely related something is by
Mike.
how much the genetics diverges. That's how you would do a paternity test. That's how you could tell to what degree your dog is like a purebred or a mutt or whatever. And it extends across species.
So is it even possible on planet Peterson that maybe the potato sends roots into the dirt and has to draw minerals out of the dirt? He has to have a code.
This was so dumb. The way, and I gave a really
laughing
long,
so
rambling answer that I'm not super happy with, but I think it was an accurate and appropriate answer. But yeah,
I was listening to this at work. Because like where I work at, like sometimes in the places I go, I don't have any internet. So I had the video downloaded. I was listening to it, and when he said this, I was audibly laughing so hard that my boss could hear me like at the top of the tank listening to me fucking laughing.
yeah.
It's
I
just
wish
like-
it could have been done so much more simply. I should have just said there are fundamentals that almost all life on this planet needs to share, and so there's a fundamental genetic component that life would have in common. But because potatoes and cats are so different, there's also a huge genetic discrepancy. But because cats and other mammals have to have so much of the same underlying biological structure, yes, the genetics between them are much more similar. So the more different the functions, the more different the genes, which you can co-opt that for common design after you know the fact. But I will let this play out, and I'm going to go to the kitchen and grab some candy while it does it. But you'll hear my answer was pretty long, and really it was too technical. It didn't need to be what it is, but it was still a correct response, I would say.
Tell it how to extract certain minerals to make a potato, and the lion has to eat certain things that contain these same minerals to build body parts that he needs. He has to, keep adding gas to the vehicle. Could it be that they both have a common need for certain minerals, and could their genetic code similarities be a result of a common need for something, or is ancestry the only way to have a great share a great grandpa, or could it be the same designer made them to meet the same needs?
If life on this planet has a common ancestor deep in the past, then that means that there would be like whatever's conducive to life, whatever works well for life, the absorption of minerals. Like we have carbon-based life on this planet, not silicon-based life. It's been proposed that that's possible, but chemically speaking, perhaps carbon just simply is the best. And in the competitive environment of the biosphere and all these other geobiochemical cycles that interact together, certain things are more conducive for life to other things. So that would carry across even vast stretches of time toward organisms. So, if there are some things, like there aren't very many things that potatoes and cats have in common, but like the idea that it was a common designer that did it and that it's not just the rules of biology, I don't really see that at all. How the idea of the designer is the better explanation, because that idea can't be tested in any way. It's just a declaration after we learned the facts of genetics. No creationist ever said, you know what? I bet we'll find a hereditary molecule. I thought I rambled for a lot longer than I actually did, apparently. So, oh well. And you'll be able to see all these crazy similarities.
Was just fine.
Well, I disagree. I think it's been tested billions of times.
I don't know like if there's anything you could say more, because like genes just express what the animal or the organism needs to do, right? So if these other animals, like let's say like a cat, for instance, like in the cat and the potato genes, what would be the things that the potato needs to do, but also the cat needs to do? Right. So what, I guess it'd be a question to you. What would be the genes that would be similar to them that they would both need to do in order for them to be related? That makes sense.
That's an extremely good question, and I don't really have much of an answer. I know that we have to have the same ribosomal genes that control the development of ribosomes. That's how we figured out that there are three kingdoms: the bacteria, the eukarya, and the archaea. But other than that, I mean, whatever, like plants have mitochondria too, like us. So you don't have genes for making mitochondria though, is the thing, because of endosymbiosis.
Because the mitochondria is its own thing, right?
So, but you'd probably find that, I don't know. I mean, the plants and animals are so different that it's hard to think of what that gene, I guess, would be. Although, probably the genes for making amino acids would be decent, because plants can make all of them. We can't make all of them, but we can make several. So I would guess that there's some genetic overlap in there.
If the plants can make the same amino acids as that of other animals, right? And the amino acids is what makes up, if I remember right, amino acids make up the DNA, right?
No, proteins.
Oh, make up the proteins. And then the proteins make up the DNA. Or am I...
No, DNA is used to...
Am I missing?
DNA contains the code for building proteins. DNA is made of nucleotides.
Okay. Do plants and animals share the same nucleotides?
Well, yeah, everything does, because there's only 5 of them.
Right. Well, that would just entail that everything's related then.
Yeah, the DNA structure itself, it wouldn't even have to be genes. You could just look at the structure of how genes are produced, I guess, would be an okay one. But anyways, I want to keep going.
Yeah. Plant potatoes and expect potatoes to
grow.
That
was a tangent. That was my question.
Yeah.
Breed cats, expect cats to come out.
Yep, that's how evolution works too, Kent.
So I think you avoided my question, though. Is there any other explanation for the potato and the cat having DNA structures that are identical? And some lines of code might be identical. Just like
Only
some lines
one explanation has any evidence, and that's the idea of evolution over time because of what we learned about how genetics and inherited characteristics works and all that. The design thing, there's no, you can just say that after the fact. It could also be unicorn farts that just made it look that way. I can just declare that with no evidence and no explanatory mechanism, but I don't believe in things that there's no evidence for.
I was amazed how he didn't call that stupid. as if he, maybe I made him realize that he has a co-equally useless idea to unicorn farts. Pretty funny.
your whole worldview is believing in things that there's no evidence for. There's no evidence for a cat ever producing anything other than a cat. There's no evidence for a potato.
That's an idiotic straw man of evolution. Evolutionists don't say that it works like Pokemon or something like that.
Okay.
I know that you know this because it's been told to you.
Oh, well, that doesn't mean I swallowed the garbage. Okay.
Well, it doesn't mean you understood it either, I guess.
Oh, I understand it. Yeah. Here's the chart.
No, because you ask horrible questions.
It's my turn to ask questions, Your Honor. Here is the chart used straight from the public school textbook, showing the butterfly has a common ancestor with a frog and a sunflower.
I'm also so glad he did this because I've never seen anybody correct him on this before. It probably has been done because of how many debates he's done, but I've never seen it like the way, and I've actually seen people do this completely wrong, where they say that because they're connected on the tree, it means that one is like the descendant of the other. I was like, no, that's not how that works. All it means is they're related. And when I drew the family tree and showed it to him, I think part of his soul died. I was so happy.
And a shark, and the ancestor was an amoeba. This is not science. You said it's evidence-based. Where's the evidence for an amoeba ever producing anything other than another amoeba? Where's the evidence of an amoeba learning how to get wings and fly like a butterfly or swim in the water like a frog? Your chart shows that it happened. You want this to be taught?
What?
Couldn't you just bring up Diplococci? The fact that so Diplococci is a multicellular organism that's made up of one organism. I can't remember what the original organism is, but basically Diplococci is these two cells that form into each other to form into a multicellular organism that doesn't behave in any single way to that of the original cell.
I never have heard of this, I guess. I'll have to look into it some more. But like a Portuguese man of war. Portuguese man of war is it's a little more complex because it's basically two multicellular colonies that are obligate symbiotes. They can't exist on their own. But it's like that's an example of something where we see two different kinds of life coming together. There's still animal life technically, but coming together to form something. We never saw it happen, but we know that it happened basically.
Yeah.
Taught to all the kids. All you have is imagination. See, just like I think God did it, made the similarity. You think, over time it did it. You're living in an imaginary world. Where's the evidence of an amoeba producing anything other than an amoeba? They've tried in the laboratory. They can't make it happen. Where's your evidence to make me want to pay for this chart to be taught to the kids? Show me the evidence of where it actually happened. An amoeba produced a non-amoeba. Show me the evidence.
Two problems. One, you're idiotic straw man. So here's like a family tree, right? So we have this generation and then this generation and then the one before it. So whatever. So if family tree, right? Can't like this make sense? This is just a clarification question.
Oh, I have a family tree. I had parents. Probably you did too, and probably grandparents too.
Sure. When did the grandparents produce the grandchildren?
Boom, bitch.
Well, this is straw man you're bringing up here now.
No, you're straw manning. He did. I know you are, but what am I, like 5 different times in this debate? I'm a little pissed off at myself. I didn't call him out for it. But the right there, I think, was the first one. I know you are, but what am I? No, you're straw manning.
You're avoiding my question.
So, I'm not avoiding your question. I'm just explaining the folly of your logic. Grandparents don't produce grandchildren, but that's not what a tree like this or like the one you're showing us tells you. It just tells you what is related and to what degree those things are related. For example, right here where my finger is, these are more closely related than these over here. So the first problem is nobody ever said that amoebas produced humans or anything like that. That's not what your chart says. I know that this has been explained to you. I don't know why you continue to say it, but if you can understand that this chart doesn't mean that grandparents produce grandchildren, they produce offspring of their own that then go on to produce other offspring, then there we go. Now, how do we tell the grandparents are related to their children?
That was the kill shot.
By
that was a kill shot.
And he
he
completely. I've heard people say this to him, something like what I just said, but then he goes to the chart and he says, "Nope, I'm looking at the chart right here, and it shows out. Look, they're all connected, and it's got the amoeba on the bottom." And people don't correct him on that, but I do correct him. You'll see it by testing their genes.
Yeah,
and we tested the genes of life on this planet. If no life on the planet outside of its own species or whatever had any genetic commonalities at all, if the correlation was 0, that would have been catastrophic for evolution. It would have completely collapsed. But that's exactly the opposite of what happened. We share more genes with other great apes than any other form of life, and then we share not as many, but more with other mammals than any other form of life, and then we share even fewer with, you go birds, reptiles, amphibians, whatever, all the way down to the plants. So.
Okay. You avoided my question. Where is the evidence?
No, I
I
did
love
not.
the fact that you keep drinking the water bottle after every mic drop. You're like, yeah, let me just
Oh, that was a good one. I'm gonna need a little hydration. The genetics.
Okay. Your grandparents produced humans.
Yep.
Those produced more humans.
Yep.
So I think if you trace your family tree back, you'd find they're all humans. This family tree that you want us to pay to teach to the kids in school shows an amoeba upside down. No, an amoeba turning into everything today. And you're saying we see evidence because they have similar code. The question is, just take step 1. I did not see your great-grandparents produce your grandparents, but I'd be willing to bet they were all human. Where is the evidence for an amoeba producing anything other than an amoeba? They make baby amoebas all the time. They have an experiment where they take bacteria, 8-hour generation time. They get born, grow up, get married, have babies in 8 hours. And they've done that ongoing experiment for
Do you say bacteria are born, grow up, get married, have? Do you say get married or did you?
He did say that. He did say that. Get married and have children. I thought it was really funny. But the thing is, like, if he wants to bring up the bacteria thing, right? The thing is that we've seen bacteria in labs speciate, right? So they start to develop their own genes. They start to develop their own thing, right? They speciate from the original species. So you could just correlate that over long periods of time, that eventually that with those major speciations that you would get an entirely different category of the bacteria.
I do eventually admit that we don't have the evidence of whatever the first unicellular eukaryote turning into multicellular eukaryotes. We don't have the direct evidence of that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And I gave the evidence for endosymbiosis as a prediction that would be necessary for complexity and multicellularity to have evolved. And then the evidence, the genetic evidence, the mitochondrial DNA evidence perfectly matched what we were thinking. And so in other words, we passed the test. It doesn't prove anything on its own, but what would have disproved it, we knew what would have disproved it. And that's the opposite of what we found. That's a line of dialogue that I started going into several months ago with evolution. And I think it's something that people need to use. We know what the evidence would have been that would have disproved it. And the exact opposite happened.
The one thing that pissed me off in this debate is that you didn't bring up CTBT.
It did get brought up in the Q&A.
It did get brought up in the Q&A.
Super chats, yeah.
But if you wanted evidence of anything changing into anything else, it would have just been like, well, CTBT.
Yeah, I had that written down for something to go into, but he didn't ask the right question for me to bring it up, because I was going to use it as a response instead of one of my talking points.
Yeah.
And they get tens of thousands, maybe millions of generations of bacteria, and they never change to anything but a bacteria. But you want me to believe on your planet Peterson that a bacteria or an amoeba could, over slow steps, because we can't see them. I think we can see all through human history. Humans make baby humans. Your grandparents were human. Now, I asked you, where is the evidence of just a single step, the first step of the amoeba becoming non-amoeba?
Right,
Where's
I've answered that. It's in the genetics, but I'll do a better job of answering the question because you don't like my answer. The problem is it's so incredibly hard to address this without asking a question in return. But we agreed to the rules, so I will abide by the rules.
You can ask questions, but I think you're trying to avoid my question.
No, I'm not. So if it's okay with you, I'll do it.
Okay.
Do you think that evolutionary biologists think that the way evolution works is one day an animal gives birth to a completely different animal?
No, I've never said that either. You guys
Yes, you did. You said, when did an amoeba produce a non-amoeba? Yeah, that is what he is claiming. Now he can claim, you can do the mafia trick where it's like, no, hey, Christopher, I need you to take care of Tony Two Fingers for me, okay? Now you can claim all I said take care of him, but we know what Kent is trying. When he says an amoeba produces an amoeba, that means that nothing can ever change. But evolution says the same thing, that everything that is ever reproduced is the same thing as its predecessor. And we never got into that either, and the language analogy works great for that too, because everybody speaks the language of their parents, but languages change dramatically over time. Professor Dave explains Rick Beato and Planet Peterson are the dark web of YouTube. Rick Beato has so nothing in common with Dave and myself.
Well, the original comment that he said in science is just a theory.
Oh, like a music theory with Beato. Pearson, aren't you repeating parts of the reaction? I don't know what that means. G'day from Oz? I don't know what that means. Well done on the debate. Thank you. Oh. Play buttons over here, dummy.
Okay,
that's exactly your claim. Your goofy strawman of evolution.
Okay, I'll try to make it real simple so you can follow it. Does this chart show the butterfly coming from the family tree root of an amoeba? Everything starts off as an amoeba. It starts at an amoeba. That's the root of the whole tree is an amoeba.
No,
so
it's
somewhere
not.
along the line, it's not.
No, the amoeba is one of the branches at the base, but it doesn't tell you. This is what nobody will correct him on, and it pisses me off so much because it completely neuters his talking point. What the base organism is.
Okay, so was it a protozoa? Was it a single-celled creature of some kind?
A single-celled eukaryote, almost certainly, yeah.
Okay, where is the scientific evidence of that first single-celled eukaryote producing offspring that were other than a single-celled eukaryote?
So there are things in the past that we will never see happen. The question is, can we gather evidence in favor of a conjecture? We can. It's in the fossil.
Is conjecture the right word to use?
Do you want to replay it and then I can see?
An opinion or conclusion formed on the basis of incomplete information. Okay, I think that would work just fine. I just said there are things in the past that we'll never be able to see happen, but that doesn't mean we can't gather evidence in favor of a conjecture. So,
yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
That works fine.
Okay.
Record, and it's in
Me not know all times if English am good.
the genetics. I'd rather save the
that was
fossil
fine.
stuff
Conjecture was
for
fine then.
next time because I think that's part of the geologic column. If that's fine with you, because I don't want to diverge down too many different paths. But
It's a good way to avoid my question for the fourth time. Where is the evidence of an amoeba or a
genetics.
single-celled creature? So there's genetic evidence that an amoeba turned to a
He
butterfly.
would just
and we should
corrected
favor
that
this
it
chart.
wasn't an amoeba, and then he's going back to the amoeba.
Yeah.
We talked to the kids.
so
Like,
for the Brazilianth
in
time,
one ear out the other immediately.
For the Brazilianth time. I saw one comment on the video. They caught that I said that. So I say so much sarcastic stuff. I'm always worried, like, do people... Because if you don't know that I'm joking, it makes me look like a moron. Or sometimes a way bigger asshole than I actually am. I was like, no, I'm just joking.
you can test if things are related by looking at the genetics, and we see a very perfect nested hierarchy of genetic similarities, genetic relatedness across organisms and across phyla, exactly what you would expect if evolution is true. So that is the evidence.
So because there are similarities in the DNA code, therefore, one changed slowly over multiple millions of generations, slow steps, into the butterfly. There are single-cell creatures with 16,000 DNA strands in them, 16,000 chromosomes in a single cell.
Okay.
This was such a dumb thing for him to say.
DNA gets duplicated. We know that.
Oh, and that's an amazing process. Woo-wee. And I mean, the way it has to split the DNA in one loops backwards and goes through the special machine that
Talks about DNA replication.
No, I mean like entire genes get duplicated. I don't mean the DNA double helix splits and gets replicated for mitosis, meiosis. I mean entire genes get duplicated. We have multiple copies of certain genes.
Right. And that process happened with no designer. Nobody made it.
Completely just flailing in the wind at this point, just saying unrelated stuff.
Correct.
He's lost.
Did somebody make the computer that you use?
Probably.
Did they write all the different lines of code to do all the different things computers do?
Probably.
This is a category error. Hold on. This is where I was going to talk about like the 5 logical fallacies or whatever like I had mentioned to you in the call prior.
Oh yeah.
This is the major problem. So let's holding on to this. So he is talking about how one thing in terms of creating a computer, that it's designed because it has lines of code, right? This is the fundamental category error. So he is saying that computers are equivalent to that of animals and organisms. It's a complete category error. They're not even entirely relevant whatsoever. The other thing is that it's an is-ought fallacy. So it ought to be the case that things are designed because this thing is designed. Therefore, it is that the case that this is designed, right? So it is an is-ought fallacy. He's also begging the question. So he's begging the question in the sense that it's designed because there's a designer. And how do I know it's designed is because it's designed.
Yeah.
It's begging the question, and it's also circular reasoning. So this entire point of this video was so utterly fallacious. The first time listening to my jaw dropped the floor because I'm more into philosophy. I debate theists all the time. So this point was like is-ought fallacy, category error, begging the question. Like it just kept going. I'm sure if I really want, like, this was just first listen. So if I wanted to dig in deeper, I probably like deconstructed to however many fallacies I wanted to point out with just that statement alone. It was terrible. It was a terrible thing to bring up.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah, pretty dumb. Okay, sorry. Back to the debate.
Could any of those arise by random mutations and chance?
That's not how computers are done or are made, so I don't understand the irrelevant question.
Well, if computers can't make themselves do mistakes and mutations, why would you think a butterfly with its incredibly complex DNA code can be a result of mutations over trillions of years from an amoeba or
because that's what the DNA evidence tells us.
Okay, so you observe this DNA similarity and conclude, without seeing it happen, you conclude that it must have happened in the past over millions of years. That's why I call it a religion. You believe that. You're welcome to believe it. I don't care what you believe, but quit calling it science. Science, what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. You can't do it. Get a bunch of bacteria.
What is science about God?
I didn't hear you.
What is science about God?
Oh, what's scientific about God?
Yeah.
In his world, absolutely nothing at all. Yeah, I mean that's a good point. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Make scientific tests of
because in his classrooms, like he teaches about God. What scientific method has he used to determine whether his God is actually doing the things that he thinks it does?
Yeah, I mean the entire thing is an argument from ignorance. It's just according to my failure to actually comprehend evolution can't account for these things. Therefore, I'm correct. No. You have to produce evidence for your claim, and he obviously never does that.
Events that occurred in the past. This is how forensics is done, for example.
So you believe we should all be required to teach that this chart is actually science?
So he got absolutely, completely dog-walked on that. Because instead of addressing that, we can, as a matter of fact, prove, in accordance with a standard that even he would agree with, that something in the past happened even though we can't observe it. He can't deal with that, so then he just says, oh, so you think we should pay tax dollars for your religion. Just a complete admission that should have counted and written down how many times he did this and what it was the result of. But yeah, he just completely basically like not even a red herring, just completely changing the subject.
Well, it's actually a non sequitur, is what it is.
Yeah. Oh shoot, what happens when you hit J? The video it goes back a little
Get
bit.
a bunch of bacteria.
Can't
or an
observe the
amoeba or
past, but you
protozoa.
can make scientific tests of events that occurred in the past. This is how forensics is done, for example.
So you believe we should all be required to teach that this chart is actually science. The amoeba, slowly over billions of generations, gained enough new information to become a shark, and a sunflower, and a frog, and a kangaroo, and everything else. I object. That's not scientific. That's your belief. We don't see
What's
it.
not
Do
science?
it.
Oh, sorry, that's not my turn to ask questions.
Do it. Get an amoeba and do it again.
I really wanted to ask that question though. What's not scientific about it? Because if he's just going to say because you can't see it happen, that doesn't mean that it's not scientific.
Well, like, how many things that are scientific that we don't see that happen? For instance, like the formation of a black hole.
Yeah.
Like we know that they form. We can deduce it scientifically with our understanding of physics. How do we know that's actually how black holes are forming if we don't see it? That's basically the same argument. So you'd have to ask them, like, do you know black holes exist and how they form? How do you know they just don't appear to exist? They just don't like pop into existence out of nothing.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't really realize this, but what EWHPT4 said there, crashing and burning, not even asking questions. I didn't realize this. I should have picked up on it. He is asking me questions, but so much of this debate of his cross-examination hasn't really been about evolution because I answer his questions really well because they're not even good questions. And then he just goes into, so you think we should be able to, or you think we should pay tax dollars? So he's actually, that's a really good point. I should have brought that up. Yeah, I mean, he's not even cross-examining me, really. He's just like flailing in the wind.
Let me see it happen this time. Do it
He's
again.
just preaching.
Why can it happen? Why do you believe it could happen long ago and far away, fairy tale style, but we can't make it happen today? They've been trying to get bacteria to change to something else, and they can't get it to work. So why should I believe it happened in the past? How's a fossil going to show that?
So no evolutionary biologist thinks that evolution happens in this weird Pokemon sort of style that you've proposed. They propose instead that it is gradual changes for vast stretches of time. But like, for example, in order to go from single-celled to multi-celled eukaryotes, the idea that Lynn Margulis came up with of endosymbiosis was proposed. And then what did we find? That mitochondria, well, we already knew this, that mitochondria and chloroplasts, they have their own DNA. They make copies of themselves. The cell doesn't make, your cells don't make mitochondria. The mitochondria do binary fission, just like prokaryotes do. Maybe one day, a very long time ago, that sort of endosymbiotic relationship began. So that's a testable idea. And when we looked at the genetic composition of chloroplasts, we found it was remarkably similar to blue-green algae, exactly what you would expect. And then when we tested when we sequenced the genomes of mitochondria, we found it was remarkably similar to different types of prokaryotes. And we actually have now witnessed a new organelle, the nitroblast or something like that, a nitrogen-fixing organelle has now newly been identified to occur in some sort of plant cell, I believe it was. I don't remember exactly.
Actually, didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's like really, it's brand new. I think it was this year.
Like how? Really?
Yeah.
Nitroblast?
I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I don't remember, but we discovered nitrogen fixation, newly evolving.
Nitroplast or blast?
Blast.
Nitroplast.
Oh, yeah, because blast means it's a type of cell. So yeah, that would be wrong.
Yeah, so nitroplast.
Yeah.
Certain forms of algae. So nitrogen fixation. What's nitrogen fixation?
So you need nitrogen. Like if you look at plant fertilizers, the number one ingredient for them is nitrogen because that's the hardest nutrient to get because soil is always lacking in nitrogen. It always has plenty of carbon, plenty of phosphorus, plenty of oxygen, whatever. Nitrogen's in the air, the N2, but it's triple bonded, and that bond is extremely, extremely hard to break. So almost no living thing on the planet can break that nitrogen bond and then turn it into nitrogen compounds that the cell can then use. It's only a few types of bacteria that can do that, and they're just called nitrogen-fixing bacteria. And they live in the roots, nodules of certain plants. So you know about crop rotation?
Yeah.
The reason you do that is because corn doesn't have nitrogen-fixing bacteria in its roots. So corn, eventually, if you plant it year after year, it takes all the nitrogen out of the soil, and the soil becomes basically sterilized, right? It'd be like taking water and taking all the dissolved oxygen out of it. No fish could live in it, even though it's water. So you rotate, you do soybeans every year or every other year, every other year or every 2 years. Because soybeans are a legume, and legumes do nitrogen fixation.
Right. Okay.
So that's the deal behind that.
Well, you answered
You
my
learn
question.
something new every day.
Finally, you answered by saying maybe a long time ago this happened.
Yeah,
It's a religion.
no,
It's
that's a
religion.
hypothesis,
admit it.
and then we look
Why
for
don't you
evidence.
Just admit, Eric, I believe it happened long ago and far away.
Because of
Can't
the
you just
evidence.
admit-
Yeah, because of the evidence. And then later on, he starts claiming that if-then statements are circular reasoning. That was so fucking funny.
I don't know
that
why
he did
he
that.
did that.
Because he had no choice at that point. He had to try to get me on something. So he accused me of begging the question, which is a tactic I've seen before. He's almost certainly going to do it when we debate the fossil record, because they claim that you tell how old a fossil or a strata layer is by the fossils in it, and we know how old the fossils are by the strata layers. So you're doing circular reasoning, which completely betrays all the work that went into dating it in the first place. We've indexed that so well at this point that now we just know. But yeah, because I told him he was doing circular reasoning, which he was begging the question the whole time. And he did the "I know you are, but what am I?" That was, I can't remember when that happened. It's pretty close to the end, but that was
It's
funny.
close to this. It's close to this. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
So do you believe?
It's
A
actually close
belief
to
that
this,
has zero supernatural appeals literally can't be a religion. So I know that even you get that. So I'm not going to address this religion
I
thing
really do
again.
get it,
It's
okay.
too stupid to deserve any more
You
attention.
are unwilling to admit that you believe by faith
Nope,
that this
evidence.
happened in the past. You're afraid to admit you believe it by faith.
That's where
Then
you'd
you
ask
lose
him
tax fund.
what does he mean by faith.
Yeah.
You should have asked him what he means by faith.
Well, I wasn't allowed to ask questions, but I just was going to hammer home every time. I have evidence for this.
Thing for your religion to be taught in schools.
We've gone over the evidence. So what's your next question?
My conclusion is, could that same evidence be interpreted? Wow, maybe the designer designed all these different life forms to live in the same environment, to use the same
Begging the
minerals out of the
question.
ground or the
Yes.
same gases out of the air, to
It's
do different things,
absolutely begging the
respiration, cell duplication.
There's no
Maybe
evidence of
it's-
that, though. It's just a claim.
No
No
you missed
evidence.
my question.
It's just a
You
claim.
missed me. Listen to the question.
Okay.
Could it be a designer did it that way?
Yes, but there's no evidence.
So yes, it could be that a designer did it.
Yes, but there's no evidence. It could
Can you
also
just give a
be
yes?
like he's doing this to try to say that he got me. But it's which is why you have to answer the question. This is a loaded question, and I'm glad he didn't do something like yes or
The
no,
way I would say,
because then you have to say
way I
yes,
would
and then
go
it
about it
sounds
is
like
like
you're giving ground, but you're not.
the way I would argue this would be saying like, yeah, it could be a designer, and the designer is Shiva, or the designer is, I don't know,
Spanky.
Brahmin or whatever. Spanky, yeah.
Yeah. It could also be that a different god that isn't the one you believe. Oh, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, you did it.
Made it that way.
I forgot about
There's no
that.
evidence of that
God
either.
did it. Right.
Yeah.
I would say if I was to analyze the data, the lines of code to make Microsoft PowerPoint, and examine the lines of code to Microsoft Word, I would find millions of identical lines of code. I would therefore conclude they got to be related. One made the other. They both came from Morse code. No, the same guys wrote the code would be another logical
Morse code.
conclusion. So you're unable to admit or realize that there might have been a designer who did it for a reason. We may not even know the reason yet.
The problem is you don't have any evidence or a working hypothesis. You hijacked the scientific data after the fact. After all this was learned, you and I are lucky enough to live when we do now, and we know so much. You took all the evidence and after the fact said, this is how my God did. I did this in my opening statement, and I think maybe I'm a prophet because you're just living up to exactly the caricature of yourself that I drew up at the beginning.
Okay, well, I believe by faith that this book I'm holding right here is true. And it says they will bring forth after their kind, after their kind, after their kind, after their kind of every sort. This is all that's ever been seen. Now, Charlie Darwin wrote a book, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection or the Preservation of Favored Races and the Struggle for Life. Do you think all the species, Charlie Darwin envisioned all the species changing into, what, at least no matter which definition of species you use, a butterfly is a different species than a sunflower. So, but you believe
No.
Yeah, he got disconnected.
Kent
Yeah.
is, which is
it's come from is it Planet Peterson? He got mad at me asking it like, are there any rules? Where do to a girl?
Yeah, these aren't. It's not worth going over this because
Yeah,
it's such a
statement,
just
yeah.
air
wide variety of things just to make people who don't want to believe.
made.
Oh wait, yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Dolphins. Let's see. Kent, do you have an explanation for why did God design animals that live full time in the water, such as dolphins, to breathe air when other marine animals like fish don't do that?
Oh yeah, if I was God, I would design a wide variety of things just to make people who don't want to believe in me anyway figure out some way to get around believing in me. I think he did it to just those who hate him.
Yeah, but
Okay.
that goes against the entire notion of the God thing, right?
Yeah.
So
If-
the God wants to be worshipped, right?
Yeah.
So what he doesn't realize, and I hope everybody in the chat realizes this, that he completely shot himself in the foot with just that statement.
And I
He
didn't.
shot himself in the foot.
I didn't realize what he said until just now. I think because it was hard to follow, but I think God did that so that people would have reasons not to believe in him. That's what he said.
Right.
And I can't believe he said that. It was so dumb.
Yeah, he shot himself in the foot because the biblical God wants to be worshipped. He wants to be recognized, right? That's what the Bible says. So now the God is contradicting itself in the Bible to not want to be worshipped and have excuses for things for people to not worship him. So if the God, it's basically like the God being a dick and condemning people to help just for the sake of doing it because it doesn't want people to believe in it. Like it's just like he shot himself in the foot.
Luke Byron,
Brian
how
wants
do
to
I,
ask
how
you,
do I
how
debate
How
you?
do I debate you?
Just join the Discord or send me a DM. Like we can debate on Discord. That'd be a perfectly fine place to do it. But yeah, just DM me on Instagram or Discord. I don't care, either one.
He would leave traces and make them scratch their heads. Aha, I got it. Probably just to make evolutionists have justified themselves for not believing. But I think dolphins enjoy the way they're made, and they
That's like a Calvinist belief. God destines people to go to hell, essentially.
seem to be smiling all the
Yeah,
time.
I wonder if he is a Calvinist.
He's a Baptist, so
so
baptism
he-
is actually a rejection. Or no, that's Methodists are. Methodism is a rejection of Calvinism. You know how I know that? King of the Hill.
Watch Lipper.
Oh, what a great show.
I don't think they would complain about their design.
So you think the reason God made animals that live in the water breathe air is to make evolutionists say what?
Oh, it's kind of just a joke, I guess. I think there's people like you who they don't want to believe. no
What's your
matter
actual answer then?
I think they're designed for that. I think God made a wide variety of things.
You're
There's some
begging,
animals that
you're begging the question. You just I asked why did God design them that way, and you just said God
I'm glad
designed
you
them
called
that
him out
way.
on that.
Yeah.
How can I possibly know that?
I'm glad that you called him out on that.
Yeah, and then I'll back it up just a second here, but here's the whole point of my opening statement was that Kent can only say
God designed them that way, and you just said God designed them that way.
How can I possibly know that?
I can't drop
There you
this
go.
microphone, but I have another microphone.
Here, let me turn off my microphone. I'll do it for you.
No, that's okay. Well, he's doing it.
Why did the
Exactly. You have a useless
did they-
worldview.
Why did the A10 Warthog designers design the
He
cockpit
lost-
to be off center?
If there was any point in where you're questioning on whether Kent truly lost that debate, It was right there. He cannot determine what is designed and what is not designed. He has no idea. He's just asserting that it's designed, but he has no idea if it's actually designed or not. He agreed to that.
Yeah.
Case closed. It's over.
You know,
Lost.
I started to worry about this when the debate started, because I kind of didn't really think about this and realize this. But, you know, if the topic of the debate is, I treated the debate as if the topic was common design is true, and he treated the debate as if the topic was evolution is true, which kind of was the topic of the debate. Is evolution the best or is common descent the best explanation? So I was worried that he would at some point, because like I didn't really. There were times where I did do this, but I didn't really force him to reckon with the evidence of evolution all that often. I just told him, here's how we can test your alternative idea, and it fails every single time. Now, he could have just been like, oh, I thought we were here to debate evolution or whatever. So, I don't know. Just a thought, I guess.
From the center of the plane, you know.
I would debate Peterson, but he would have to shut his channel down due to embarrassment. What?
I think he's trolling you.
Remember? I think so too. Remember when Jacob said unprovoked, Jacob challenged me to debate him on do decay rates for isotopes change over time, and he said unprovoked that the loser has to delete their channel, and then he made a video. I looked at his sources, and his sources debunked his other sources. He used this one paper to say these scientists found that the rate changes, blah blah blah. And then he quoted a different paper. After I read the paper, that second paper he quoted was a paper written to address the first one and proves everything in the first paper was false. And so I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And so I made my video addressing that, and he blocked me, and he created this video where he was like, yeah, Planet Peterson, I mean, well, he basically lost the debate by default because he changed the goalpost before it even started. But I gotta tell you, I had to block him because his followers, they were sending me sexualized messages, and it was getting pretty creepy. I was like, you fucking loser. You pathetic loser. You lost so bad. And then he blocked me. That was so fucking funny. That was really close to exactly a year ago. But anyways.
The designers handle that.
I don't
okay?
remember
That's
that
a
at
problem
all.
they got to handle.
Oh, you don't? You don't remember the Jacob guy? He had a big beard. It's so funny. If you go to my TikTok, in my Me versus Others playlist, which is I think my first playlist, you'll find it on there. That's a short playlist.
My dad was an engineer, Caterpillar Tractor Company. They're always designing different things.
It's on YouTube too. I could just play it when we get done with this.
I believe everything shows evidence of design. It sure works awfully well. Especially since we're who knows how many generations away from the original. So if some things no longer work, that's like a radio in my car doesn't work, that's okay, I don't care. So it doesn't prove it wasn't designed. So you jump to the conclusion that, wow, because something doesn't work, therefore nobody designed any of it.
I never said anything doesn't work. I just asked you, why do dolphins breathe air when fish don't breathe air? Why would God design them that way? And you said you don't know, and it's not possible to know because you can't comprehend what your designer does. Again, this is what I talked about in my opening statement, and everything I said is coming true.
Well, the difference is, I admit, I believe by faith God designed it. You will not admit that you believe by faith the amoeba turned to the dolphin. Your chart shows the amoeba over millions of generations, slowly turning to a dolphin.
Yeah, but that idea is testable, and we went over that. So are you conceding that you can give me zero reason to believe what you believe, because by your own admission it's incomprehensible and you can't explain it in any way?
I believe every living creature on the planet is so complex, even an amoeba, a mosquito, the whale, every living thing is complex beyond our comprehension. It takes thousands of hours of study to just begin to understand how it works, to actually make one. Get all the scientific.
Yeah, and he's not answering my question at all. Are you telling me you can't give me a reason to believe? Mosquitoes are so complex. The A10 warthog, blah blah blah.
In the world together, give them all the chemicals they want, all the elements. See if they can make a mosquito. They can't do it. They can't do it. The mosquitoes can make other mosquitoes.
Do you know do you know what an argument from incredulity is?
Yeah, you've been making them all night.
No, you just unironic. I know you are, but what am I? Made one. You said we don't know how to make life, therefore God made life. So you haven't given any evidence.
At what point did you make an argument out of incredulity in this debate? I don't think
never.
One out.
Never. No, never. Yeah, no, never.
Life got started, but therefore it had to start over millions of years. You haven't given any evidence of how that happened either.
Yes, I have. We looked at
where's the evidence of life coming from non-living material?
Oh, well, that's not what evolution is. That's abiogenesis. But
that's an essential step.
So the alternative explanation would be that life must be the product of miraculous creation. But there's
literally is with the abiogenesis thing, it's completely irrelevant.
Yes.
So it could be the case that the god just spontaneously generated the.
Yeah, I say that later on. Yeah.
Nothing miraculous about life at all. When the DNA is copied, does a miracle occur? No, we understand scientifically how that happens. Does a miracle occur when the Krebs cycle happens and organisms phosphorylize ADP and extract energy, whatever? No miracle takes place. So on what grounds must I assume that the origins of a chemical process like life, a merely physical, non-miraculous chemical process, life, on what grounds must I assume that that had miraculous origins when literally everything we know about it is non-miraculous? That's just not tenable. That's a really bad argument from incredulity and ignorance.
Okay. We understand how gasoline explodes if it's mixed with oxygen.
God.
And gets a little spark to it. We understand how it gets into the piston and the piston pushes the piston down. If you have rings and valves, we understand how engines work. Therefore, nobody made the engine because we know how it worked. Nobody made the engine. Are you kidding? Nobody made it. We know how it works. That's your argument, and you don't even see it. You'll never admit it. You don't even see it.
No, your question was, is life the product of mere non-miraculous physical laws or whatever, which would be my worldview, a secular worldview, or was it done magically by a special creator? There's no evidence that it was done magically by a special creator. Even if I don't know how life was created, that doesn't mean that your argument is correct. This is just classic argument from ignorance and incredulity.
If I don't know who built the engine and I didn't see the engine get built, therefore I know how it works.
I never did, but I wanted to say here, we know that people make engines. So we have
you do say that.
We have I do? Maybe I do. But we have priors for coming to that conclusion. Whereas with life, we have no evidence of any miracle ever taking place. And nothing about life is miraculous, so it's an unwarranted explanation.
I understand how compression works and a timing cycle and all that stuff and the valves and the valve lash and everything. I've done a lot of engine work. So therefore, because I understand how it works pretty well, nobody made it. That's your argument. My question was, can you make a mosquito? You can tell me how it works. You can tell me about the Krebs cycle, how it gets its energy, and you can tell me how it flies and how the muscles contract and how the ATP and all that stuff works.
You've never seen an engine come from a non-engine.
You're avoiding the question completely. How did it originate?
Exactly how we see engines come about.
I don't know. It's like saying I know how the engine works, therefore nobody made it. You know how life works. We know how we take gases out of the air and minerals out of the ground and synthesize it into our body cells. Yeah, we have a pretty good.
Yes. We know how engines are made, therefore nobody made it is so bad. What I'm saying is we know how life works. I'm saying it's unwarranted a specific explanation. So I never said this, which would have been good, but I'm ruling out his very specific explanation. Life came from somewhere. There's no reason to claim that it came from creation.
An understanding of a lot of that stuff. But that doesn't explain the origin of it. You're avoiding it completely.
The origin would be complete. So if God created life on this planet, but billions of years ago, like I think, that wouldn't make evolution false. Everything we know about biological evolution would be true. Abiogenesis is a separate question. The evidence for evolution only points in one way. Now, for abiogenesis, I did go over this earlier. I don't know specifically how the very first living thing came into being, but that doesn't mean that your God did it. And there's no evidence that any God could have done it because we have no reason to assume that the process that produced organic life on this planet had to have been miraculous because there's no evidence of that. But also, nothing about life is miraculous. So there's no reason to assume it must have been the work of some being of infinite incomprehensibility.
Okay. There's no evidence of how it got started with your worldview either. That's why you avoid that. There's no evidence that life can come from non-living chemicals in a warm little pond someplace. This is a theory, a philosophy, a belief, a religion. There's no evidence. There's no evidence. I don't have any evidence of how the Chevy motor was made for my truck. I have no evidence. I didn't see it.
I
I've
mean,
been to
that's
Chevy. I
not
worked
true. There's some level of evidence to abiogenesis.
Yeah.
at General Motors. I know how they go. I understand how they work.
That's
And you're telling me because we understand how life works, therefore, there's no evidence that there was a designer.
there's no requirement for a designer to be. So when we have
Yeah,
when we have questions that we don't have answers for yet, we search for the best explanation. And a magic explanation I don't think is ever preferable to a natural explanation, but the natural explanation has a really massive burden of proof, and we don't have any working theories for abiogenesis or anything like that yet. But we take what we know about life, that all life shares genes, so that would point to a common ancestor, like a last universal common ancestor, whatever, a long time ago. And we know that life is made of ordinary chemicals. Like, literally, life is chemistry. So the idea that chemistry would beget life in the first place is really not very far-fetched. It's not religious in any way. It's just scientific, because we're studying life and applying what we know about life to try to make come up with new ideas, experiments, explanations, things like that. Like there's research in origins of life, abiogenesis. They've been able to make autocatalytic self-replicating chemical systems with RNA. They've been able to do it with amyloids, which are a type of protein, for example. Prions, which are like these folded proteins that you get. They cause things like mad cow disease and things like that. Prions actually they replicate themselves. They are these folded proteins, and they are capable of synthesizing more copies of themselves. So whatever the process that would have generated you for
you
like
went full on Destiny mode there. It's like fucking like here's this.
a little bit, but I mean, yeah,
you went Destiny there.
You see,
you went a Destiny mode there.
Analogs to that, but we don't have highly sophisticated explanations like we do for like general relativity and things like that. That's fine, but it doesn't mean that God did it is an acceptable answer.
Right. Doesn't mean that God did it. And neither does it mean that it happened by chance. It means we both have a religious belief in how it happened, and you want me to pay for yours to be taught. Here's a public school textbook, Glencoe Biology, one of the top 4 publishers. It says, Earth is formed 4.6 billion years ago. It was a hot ball of rock. It rained on the rocks for millions of years. And in these oceans, the first living organisms appeared. Poof. That's not science. That's a religious statement. They believe it happened. Mr. Nelson gets all upset. Nobody believes we came from a rock. Yes, you do. Earth began as a hot ball of rock. Do you believe Earth was a hot ball of rock 3.9 billion years ago, and it cooled down and it rained on the rocks and turned to soup in the oceans, and we came from the soup?
Yeah. Well, the really dumb thing, and I on TikTok saw a clip of when Professor Dave talked to Kent, and Kent did this same thing. He kept saying, like, you think that a rock turned into a person or whatever, and the analogy the analogy Dave gave was really good. He's like, if a mother is pregnant and eats pizza, does that mean that the pizza turns into a baby? No, that's stupid. And he had a it was like a term or a phrase for it that was really good. But yeah, things are produced from the environment, out of resources in the environment, but not from things that also contain those resources. So it's just really dumb. But he does believe that wet rocks turned into a person. Just there was Jesus jizz involved in that. Your camera's frozen. Yeah. Hold on. For some reason on OBS it's frozen. Let me just still frozen. There, it's good now. I fixed it.
Okay. Everybody gets.
I just changed the input and then flipped it back.
By the way, my hands are dirty just because I got off work and I literally just ran to my computer and sat down. So, apologize for my rusty, dirty hands.
Well, what the hell? Now this is frozen. What the?
What's frozen?
After I unfroze you, the YouTube was frozen. Is
Sure.
Okay, so this is I want to skip over this, but he kind of gets me here because I don't know where he got this definition of religion from, but it just says like a common belief or whatever. This was like the only point in the debate where he scored any points, but it was just basically, I don't know. It was
Well, so the religion definition is the belief and worship of a superhuman power or powers, especially God or gods.
yeah. The first definition he brought up kind of required that supernatural aspect, and then he did this other one where it's right here. It's also commonly regarded as consisting of the way people deal with concerns or no. There was a definition he pulls up where it's like a common belief or something like that. So
Yeah, so I don't know where he got the definition from, but it seems like he cherry picked it.
Yeah.
So the other definitions are a particular system of faith and worship, or a pursuit of interest followed with great devotion.
yeah.
So those would be like the three like colloquial definitions.
Oh,
So
digital.
he's-
Oh, sorry. I was just digital Hammurabi's here. Pfft, atheists. Planet probably can't even ground the the instantation of the necessary preconditions for provision of all possible impossibilities for instantiational ultimacy of grounding. Typical. That was a great LARP of Darth.
Religion.
Okay, I want to skip over this religion stuff.
You would not.
I see.
I think that's the difference.
Oh yeah, this is the joke I told that was, or he tried to tell a joke and then I
Wait,
got
is
him
it
back.
Playing?
What?
Are you playing the video right now?
It's paused right now.
Most people with a brain.
Oh, you're paused.
Yeah.
Play it right now. I'm not hearing it.
Was that
supposed to
Like
be funny?
it's frozen for
Sure.
me on Discord.
I love
Data
I
potatoes.
might have to like stop the stream and restream it.
Okay.
Let's see. Play it.
Oop, hold on. We're not quite there yet.
Yeah. Do you?
Maybe, but it's
Yeah, it's
never
good.
come up. But you actually said we are because we share genes.
Okay.
You,
so if you're
you
related
agreed
to a potato,
to that. That's what that means.
well, religion. Get back to on topic. So if you're related to a potato, do you eat potatoes? Do you eat French fries or?
I love
potato chips?
potatoes. Potatoes, like,
You
it's
eat-
one of the
you
most
eat your
versatile
relatives?
foods on the planet.
I know. So you eat your relatives. Shame on you.
Was that
You know,
The
supposed to be
fact that
funny?
you did think that was funny, shame on you.
I
You
just-
lost the debate there.
I
You took
didn't.
the L.
But this is
You took the L.
I love this.
It is funny. Okay. I think most people with a brain cell working understand that is funny. Okay. Human beings, relation.
If you
to that
only
which
have
we
one
regard-
brain cell, then you would think that's funny. If you have more than one, you would not.
I see.
I think that's
wow,
the
Peter,
difference
so you
between
calling
us.
me that I have one brain cell? Because I think that's actually funny. I think it's you who has one brain cell who doesn't think it's funny. I thought that was actually funny. I thought it was clever.
Yeah. They regard as holy, sacred, and absolute. You believe absolutely that all life came from a single-celled creature,
Nope.
and you don't believe that?
I don't believe it absolutely, and it certainly isn't a holy belief of mine.
Oh, okay. That's it.
Can I address some things? It's been more so directed at me for
Sure.
the last several
Ask any
minutes. I
questions
feel
you
like.
You ask any questions you like.
Sure. Do birds have teeth?
Do birds have teeth?
Yeah.
I think
This part went so badly for him.
some hummingbirds do. I don't know whether it's just a keratin projection or not, actual tooth, like enamel. I don't know.
No, they're not really teeth. Their beaks can be like bumpy, but they don't have
Serrated, right,
real
serrated,
teeth.
huh?
Yeah. People say geese have teeth too. They don't. They just have bumpy beaks. That's not real teeth.
Isn't there
so
some
if birds
birds
evolve-
right now that have teeth?
Nope.
I think no.
No, some like chickens, when they're a chick, they'll have what's called like a beak tooth or an egg tooth or something like that they use to peck their way out of the shell. But it's not really a tooth. It's not made of enamel or anything like that.
Well, I guess I was wrong.
Then they would have evolved
for some
from an
reason. I
animal.
thought like some geese had actually had teeth for some reason.
No.
That had teeth, and they would have gradually lost those teeth. That's what the evolutionist would say happened.
Your first three words give it away. If birds evolved, they didn't. They were created.
So in
That's just an
science or
assertion.
even like in a
Yeah, I just it was so stupid. He kept doing this too because he was just he was terrified of it.
Court of law are just common sense. We start with questions and then we propose, if this is what happened, then this would be like, we're basically forming a hypothesis, I guess. If this happened, then that would be the evidence. So I think you agree that that's what the evolutionary prediction would be. Do you know what Hesperornis is?
It's one of the types of birds or something, a fossil they found. But
Could you you're sharing the screen. Could you like Google Hesperornis and we could look at a picture of it?
in PowerPoint, I can't Google it and show the screen. I can have to cut it and paste it into a PowerPoint slide. It doesn't matter. If they find a fossil, in the dirt like Hesperornis, all you could really prove is it died. You don't know it had any children. Do you know they had children that were different than themselves?
So again, the way evidence works is we're not trying to establish absolutes or anything like that. We are looking for evidence consistent with an explanation or a hypothesis. So Hesperornis does have teeth. It is a bird with teeth. Hesperornises are not around anymore. They went extinct. How is the explanation, or how is that anything other than evidence of evolution?
What? If a creature goes extinct, maybe that's an example of extinction, which is the opposite
I'm talking about
of what you
Hesperornis
need.
having teeth, not that it went extinct. Hesperornis has
He hates this question.
He really
hates
does. Yeah.
teeth. Modern birds do not. Exactly what we would predict in the theory of evolution is that birds would be descendants of animals that had teeth. They would gradually lose them. It's not Pokemon where one day a dinosaur lays an egg and inside that egg is a hummingbird.
Well, Eric,
We
if an
found birds
animal-
with teeth. How is that anything other than evidence of evolution?
I think the fact that we find fossils at all is evidence of rapid burial, like Noah's flood would do. How many animals died in the last 5 years?
You're not
And none of them
answering
turned
the
to
question.
fossils. Well, yeah. If we find a fossil of a bird with teeth, and we can no longer find them alive, first place, I don't think you could prove anything is extinct. We get to be all places at the same time. Extinction is very hard to prove. But let's suppose it is extinct.
What?
It could be.
He thinks the Loch Ness monster exists. I'm pretty sure. I did a video. He thinks that in Central Africa there's a sauropod Mokele Mbembe. He thinks that that's a sauropod dinosaur and still exists. So yeah.
God
Isn't
designed a lot of
Macaulay
different.
Kambe more of a description of that of an elephant? Like it's like a
I-
mythological creature. right?
Yeah, I recently did a video on TikTok on this. So the explanations for Mokele Mbembe are what it is it's a bunch of people that all saw something different, but they don't know what it was. So they all assume they're seeing the same thing. So you get it's about the size of an elephant and is gray. That's what an elephant is. There's also the explanation that it has a long neck. Well, if you look at elephants swimming in the water, it looks just like the Loch Ness monster. And you see it from a long ways away, you think you're seeing a Loch Ness monster type of animal or something like that. It's also proposed that it has a long tail like a crocodile. That's because somebody saw a fucking crocodile in the water but didn't see the whole thing and didn't know what it was. They just saw a big fat tail. And then there's also this idea that it has one tooth, but some versions of it say it has a horn. And it's like you saw a rhinoceros from really far away and only part of it and you didn't know what it was. Everybody's story gets congealed together, and that's what Mokele Mbembe is. So,
Yeah. Have you ever thought that maybe Loch Ness monster is just like a really lost elephant in Scotland, and people are just seeing?
that would be funny.
Creatures, and some have gone
It would be
extinct.
absolutely hilarious.
That's not evidence for evolution. How on earth do you twist it to make that conclusion? It could just as well be that Hesperornis is incredibly complex, really more complex.
He's doing the complex. Well, I think it's because it's complex. Oh, God, he did that so many times.
Space
Hesperornis is complex.
shuttle.
Does
And yet you think
evolution
that-
mean change over time? Is that the implication?
Well, you'd like it to be a nice, simple definition like that. I think evolution has 6 different meanings. I cover that many times. I'm sorry you don't like them. You want to avoid the
What's
cosmic
the 6
evolution.
different meanings of evolution? Why is he bringing that
Cosmic
up?
evolution. Fuck, I don't know what they all are, but like on his website, he has the $250,000 challenge. If you can prove evolution, he'll give you $250,000. But you have to prove absolutely the 6 different types of evolution, and one of them is the Big Bang. And by that, he means you have to prove something came from nothing. So I don't remember what all
It's
of
not
his
even what the Big
versions
Bang
of it are.
says.
Yeah, he says like you have to do Big Bang, you have to prove that planets come from non-planets, you have to prove that information comes from non-information, and so on and so forth.
and stellar evolution and organic evolution and the origin of life. You want to avoid all that, and I know why. Because you want to make it real simple. Change over time. Sure, there's changes. There are now 339 breeds of dogs, and man has changed some of them to make the Chihuahua and the Great Dane, but they're limited. So if that's what you mean by evolution, then creation
if birds evolved, then if birds which don't have teeth evolved, then they would have evolved from a tooth-bearing common ancestor. We see birds. Hesperornis, it's really not debatable whether or not Hesperornis was a bird. Like, we could look at Archaeopteryx, and there's arguments like, was it really a bird or was it not really a bird? Hesperornis has teeth. That is exactly what you would predict if evolution is true.
I don't know what he was trying to say because I was not going to let him interrupt me here, but...
So let me see.
No, it's good that you just overtalked him. I don't disagree with that. Normally, I try to, like, I hate overtalking, but at this point, like, I would be like, I'm just going to ignore you, Ken. I'm just going to talk over you and say what I...
A bird was found, a fossil bird with teeth.
Yep.
Birds today don't have teeth.
Yep.
Therefore, it had to evolve from Hesperornis.
It's evidence consistent with the hypothesis. Yes, it is.
My hypothesis would be God designed a variety of birds. Some
Where's
could
the
fly.
evidence?
That's not a hypothesis. I mean, you can say it is, but it's actually just the conclusion we're looking for, given in light of the current evidence we have. Turns out that there are birds that don't look like modern birds and have traits that no modern birds have. Well, my hypothesis is God created them that way. That's not a hypothesis.
It's not a hypothesis.
It's just the conclusion.
Some cannot fly.
The hypothesis would be that I think there is a God that created this thing.
Yeah.
Therefore, I need to find evidence to find this thing.
It could be a hypothesis, but because there is no working explanation, and we already know that the way he's going to justify it is just to assert the conclusion again. Like in science, your hypothesis is the thing you're trying to prove, and flat earthers call this circular reasoning too, but it's not, because you establish the validity of your hypothesis given the evidence.
Right.
So it's just...
Today they cannot fly.
And
like
was
the
holding back his taxes for years to save up for that challenge prize.
Debating him is like wrestling an oiled pig. Yeah, I mean, I think I did pretty well, but he was still a slippery little fuck.
And the emu, they can't fly, like a penguin. Okay, so I think God designed some birds with teeth, and he designed some without teeth, and the one with teeth went extinct because people hunted them or killed them, or they died for, I don't know, but they're gone. Let's assume they're gone. But to say that because we find birds with teeth in the fossils, and we find birds that don't have teeth, therefore there's a connection between them, Your Honor, throw this case out. This is silly logic.
The connection would be the fact that, like, if you... I know this is probably going to be bringing up in your column debate, but, like, the evidence would be that there were no birds prior that had no teeth.
Yeah, you don't...
There was only birds.
There are non-overlapping groups of animals in the fossil record. Yeah, like, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know you're probably saving that for the next debate. You probably didn't want to go into the fossil record right now.
Yeah.
But, like...
Well, I was just mostly focusing on... that you would predict to find birds with teeth in the fossil record if they evolved. And that's exactly what we find. So it is evidence. It doesn't prove it, I guess, but it is evidence. And he wouldn't even admit that it's evidence.
It's consistent with the idea.
No, it's not. In your world.
Well, it is, because if birds evolved, they evolved from something that had teeth, and we find intermediates, birds with teeth.
You don't know birds evolved at all. You're starting with your conclusion.
Did it better.
No, I'm...
See...
the IRS. And...
Yeah. But I got back this up.
Ario's just going in.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Teeth.
You don't know birds evolved at all. You're starting with your conclusion.
No, I'm not.
And you're
that's not. No, you're starting with a proposed like hypothesis or whatever. If evolution is true, here's the evidence.
Stop right there.
Here's the evidence.
It's not true.
Is that how it works? So, Kent, every single time you propose something in your worldview, I'm going to interrupt you and say that you're wrong.
Okay.
And what would that prove? Okay, grow up, Kent.
Okay, you have said it about 4 times. The same thing over and over. You're determined to believe by faith that a Hesperornis.
Somebody said in a comment, it was about Darth. They said, Darth's not an adult, he's just old. And I was like, that's fucking brilliant. He's not an adult. He's just old.
Hesperornis, a bird with teeth,
That's so good.
gave rise to the birds today without teeth because it lost its teeth.
No.
That's not logic.
If evolution is true, it would mean
Stop right
it would mean that organisms change over time, and we would see the evidence of that by seeing traits either highly derived traits gradually appear, like the hominin fossils with our craniums growing larger, or we would see some traits disappear. Birds don't have teeth. That's a little bit odd because the terrestrial biosphere is full of animals with teeth. So it was proposed that birds specifically evolved from dinosaurs, and then if evolution is gradual change over time, we would see birds with teeth, but which makes them a little bit different from modern birds, but nonetheless still birds. Hesperornis is exactly that. It is the evidence, an example of the evidence we were looking for. It doesn't prove anything by itself, but it's evidence. There's no contradiction here.
Okay. Hesperornis is evidence of extinction, which is the opposite of what you need. It's evidence of losing.
I wish we could have gone over this because extinction is required for evolution to occur. And it doesn't even have to be asteroids or whatever. There could be no like natural disaster. There could be no killings, and extinctions are still required for evolution to take place. Because if something evolves, that means that it evolves from something different in the past, which means its basal form ceases existing. Like it was just, I don't think people get that, but that is the case. It's not necessarily the case, but it is.
Well, I was about to say that, like, because isn't there like different families of like coelacanths, for instance?
Well, yeah, but the coelacanths we find in the fossil record aren't the coelacanths of today. That's another thing that we don't really get.
Right?
Like there were things like crocodiles existed during the time of the dinosaurs, and they still exist today. Yes, but the crocodiles of today were not around. The species were not around back then.
It wouldn't be the exact same species. They look very similar.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
they're in the
almost
same
identical,
group.
but-
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're not the same species.
Like
they're the same either genre or family, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I see
Actually-
what you're saying.
Yeah.
thing, which is the opposite of what you need. Where's the examples of some animal gaining something new? What if we found a bunch of fossil birds without teeth, and that birds today had teeth? Would that also be evidence for your religion? I mean, for your theory?
If it was the other way around, if birds today have teeth and fossilized birds didn't have teeth, would that be evidence? Did I understand your question correct?
Right. Yes. Would that be evidence for your evolution?
Yes, because it would mean change over time. So if we saw
way it
birds
works,
in the
okay.
past that were different than birds of today, that would be evidence of change over time. So
Okay. So
congratulations on the own goal there.
Okay, now, here. Amoeba, single-celled creatures, do not have teeth. Many animals on this chart have teeth. So quite a few animals gain teeth. The amoeba didn't have any.
This amoeba Cellular thing was organisms, really dumb. Like terrestrial vertebrates.
You kept
do
going
have
back to.
Do you want to shift into some closing statement?
Okay, well that's the end of and then it just gets to super chats after that, but we've been going for 2.5 hours, so I think that's all I want to do with regard to that.
Yeah. So, was there any arguments that you've made that you think you would have changed?
The one about potatoes need minerals and so do lions. I just wish I would have addressed it differently. What I said was fine and true. I just wish I would have done it a little bit differently. I don't think there's a single answer to anything he proposed to me during cross-examination or open questioning that I would have changed. No, I don't think so.
Would you have changed any approach that you would have done like during your cross-examination?
Yeah. Basically, I would have interrupted and said, Kent, this is yes, no, or I don't know. And I'm going to make sure that I do that next time.